The ancient temples, long-standing monuments to the gods, have always held a special kind of reverence. But what if there was more to them than what we see with our eyes? What if these grand structures, carved into stone, adorned with the weight of history, were more than just places of worship? Beneath their majestic facades, beyond the towering columns and the sacred altars, something else lay hidden. These temples were not merely built for rituals or prayers. They were sanctuaries, each one a portal to a deeper, more mysterious realm. Consider the grandeur of Egypt's temples, their colossal structures rising like silent giants against the desert backdrop. During the day, they basked in the warmth of the sun, welcoming the devout and the curious. But at night, they took on an entirely different life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the temples were said to transform. The vibrant energy of the day faded, and a stillness crept in, one that felt heavy with secrets. It was in this eerie quiet, when the shadows stretched long and the world seemed to sleep, that the true power of the temples was said to awaken. Across the world, in Greece and Mesopotamia, similar myths and beliefs surrounded these sacred places. In the shadow of the Parthenon, the great temples to Apollo and Athena seemed to hold their breath in the darkness, as if waiting for something. Their marble structures, so beautiful in the daylight, became almost haunting at night, places of both awe and unease. It is said that the priests, those entrusted with the most sacred knowledge, would conduct ceremonies in these temples, cloaked in the mystery of the night. Under the cover of darkness, the gods could be summoned, their voices whispered through the silence, revealing secrets that the daylight could never hope to uncover. Then there are the temples in India, where the belief in the unseen is woven deeply into the fabric of daily life. The great temples dedicated to Vishnu, Shiva, and other deities glowed with incense and prayers throughout the day. Yet it was after nightfall that the true essence of these places came alive. The vast stone walls, covered in intricate carvings of gods and celestial beings, seemed to shift under the flicker of oil lamps. What was once a vibrant, bustling place during the day transformed into a space that felt timeless, eternal. Even it was here, in the stillness of the night, that those who dared enter would whisper prayers or chant mantras, hoping to transcend the limits of the mortal world and touch the divine. Across cultures, there is a common thread that runs through these temples. They were not just physical structures, but gateways to a higher realm, where the boundaries between the world of the living and the divine were believed to blur. The veil that separated us from them, the gods, the spirits, the unseen forces, was said to thin during the night. And in this sacred space between day and night, the impossible seemed possible. Have you ever wondered what really happened in these ancient temples when the sun dipped below the horizon? What secrets did they hide under the cover of darkness? It's as though the temples themselves were vessels, holding something just out of reach, something hidden from the world outside. And as the night settled in, these sanctuaries became the stage for rituals and events that we may never fully understand. The mysteries of these ancient temples persist, hidden in the crevices of time, waiting to be uncovered. But to truly unravel their secrets, we must dive deeper into the rituals and activities that unfolded behind those sacred walls when the world outside slept. What was whispered in the stillness of the night? What ancient rites were carried out, only to be erased from history? Let's step inside the shadows and discover what lies beneath the surface. As night fell across the ancient world, the grand temples, already revered as sacred spaces during the day, became something entirely different. The once bustling courtyards grew eerily quiet, and the towering stone walls, which seemed so monumental in the daylight, took on a more imposing, shadowed form. In the dim flicker of torchlight, the temple became an entirely different world, a world where the ordinary ceased to exist, and something else, something far more mysterious, began to unfold. Inside, the air thickened with incense and the scent of sacred oils. The chambers, adorned with intricate carvings and statues of gods, became vessels for the otherworldly. The flickering flames cast long, trembling shadows across the stone, the quiet rustle of robes and murmured prayers, the only sounds that dared break the silence. Yet, beneath this calm exterior, something deeper was taking place, something that would be hidden from all but the most trusted initiates. These rituals were not meant for the eyes of the public. They were reserved for the high priests, priestesses, and the chosen few who could be trusted with the ancient secrets passed down through generations. They were the keepers of forbidden knowledge, those who held the power to communicate with the divine, to open the gateways between the earthly and the divine, to access knowledge that most could only dream of. The ceremonies were shrouded in secrecy, performed in hushed tones and shadowed corners of the temple, far from the reach of common worshippers. The rituals themselves were both mysterious and haunting. In the still of the night, the priests would gather, their movements deliberate and ritualistic, as though each action held the weight of an ancient command. Chants, whispered in long-forgotten tongues, filled the air, resonating off the stone walls and echoing through the vast cavernous chambers. These were not mere prayers but incantations, carefully crafted to summon something, perhaps not just the gods themselves, but forces older, darker, and far more powerful. As the incense swirled and the air grew heavier with the scent of burning offerings, sacrifices would be made, sometimes of animals, sometimes of precious items, but occasionally the rituals called for more than physical gifts. At times it was the very essence of the worshippers that was offered, whether through fasting, self-inflicted rituals, or trance-inducing practices. Those who took part in these ceremonies sought to unlock an energy that would connect them to realms beyond the mortal plane. The haunting sounds of distant drums would sometimes vibrate through the temple, signaling the deepening of the ritual. The priestesses, in their flowing robes, would sway hypnotically, as if guided by an unseen force, their eyes closed, their faces serene as they entered a trance. These were not ordinary moments of worship, they were moments where the very nature of reality seemed to bend. The chanting, the offerings, the quiet incantations, all were part of a complex ritual designed to transcend the physical world and step into the divine. But were these rituals truly for spiritual enlightenment? Or was there something more at play here? Were the high priests and priestesses tapping into forces far beyond our comprehension? Forces that could influence not just their fate, but the fate of entire civilizations. Some say that these rituals were intended to unlock the hidden knowledge of the universe, to manipulate the forces that governed life and death, to harness the power of the gods themselves. And yet, few have dared to ask, what else could these rituals have awakened? These practices were not simply about connecting to the divine, they were about power and the pursuit of something far greater than simple worship. There is always a question that lingers just out of reach. Did the rituals of the night unlock something hidden, something dangerous? And so, the temples, once places of beauty and worship, were transformed at night into spaces of mystery, their true purpose obscured by the fog of time. What secrets did these ancient rites hide? What ancient power did they truly awaken? These are questions we may never fully answer, but as we ponder them, we are left to wonder, if we could step back into those shadowed chambers, what would we see? What would we discover in the dark corners of these ancient sanctuaries? Yet, the rituals were just one part of the mysteries these temples held. What of the people who lived and worked inside these temples? What experiences did they endure in the quiet of the night? What were they privy to? And what did they witness behind the sacred walls? Inside the grand, stone walls of the ancient temples, life was far from ordinary. These were not places where people simply came to pray. The temple was a world unto itself, a self-contained society, bound by rules, rituals, and mysteries that most would never fully understand. At the heart of it, all were the high priests and priestesses, figures draped in the mantle of divine authority, but beneath their commanding presence lay the same human complexities as anyone else. And then there were those who served in the background, the humble attendants, the novices, the scribes, who spent their days in service to the temple, but were never given the power or prestige of their higher-ranked counterparts. The daily lives of those within the temple were ruled by strict routines, dictated by the ever-present influence of the divine. The high priests woke before the first light of dawn, their minds already immersed in the sacred duties awaiting them. They were not just spiritual leaders, they were also keepers of the temple's secrets. Every word they spoke, every action they took, was carefully observed, as though their every movement could unlock hidden truths. These men and women were believed to possess knowledge that transcended mortal understanding, knowledge that could connect them with the gods themselves. But did they truly understand the forces they were dealing with? Or were they simply vessels, chosen for their perceived purity and devotion, caught in a much larger game they couldn't comprehend? The attendants, on the other hand, lived within the temple's walls, but in a different world entirely. They were not the keepers of knowledge, but the hands that maintained the sacred spaces. They cleaned the altars, prepared the offerings, and ensured that the rituals went smoothly. While the high priests and priestesses held the power to influence the spiritual realm, the attendants were the unsung witnesses to the strange and often unsettling events that occurred behind the closed doors of the temple. Some say these humble workers were the first to hear the faint whispers that filled the chambers at night, whispers that couldn't be explained by the wind or the flicker of torches. There were those who claimed to feel a presence, an unseen force that seemed to watch them as they worked, a presence that became stronger with the setting of the sun. As night fell, the temple doors were closed to the outside world, and those within were cut off from the mundane reality outside. But what happened after the last visitor had left, after the rituals had ended, and the temple was cloaked in darkness? The high priests, who had spent the day offering prayers and sacrifices, would retreat to hidden chambers, places unknown even to the attendants. These secretive spaces were thought to hold the most sacred knowledge, ancient scrolls, mystical symbols, and artifacts that could open doors to realms beyond human comprehension. What were the high priests doing in these chambers, alone with their secrets? Some say they were communicating with beings not of this world. Others claim they were performing rituals so powerful that they could alter the course of time itself. And then there were the strange occurrences, the moments that made even the most devout question their own understanding of reality. Flickering lights in the dead of night, the sound of footsteps when no one else was around, strange visions and dreams that lingered long after sleep had passed. Were these signs of divine favor, or were they something darker, something tied to the forbidden knowledge that only a select few were privy to? It's easy to imagine that the temple was a place of quiet devotion, a peaceful sanctuary dedicated to the gods. But as we peer deeper into the lives of those who lived within its walls, we begin to uncover a different reality, one where the line between the divine and the unknown was blurred. The people who lived in these sacred spaces may have believed they were in control of the forces at work within the temple, but in truth, they were often pawns in a much larger game, players in a mystery that has been lost to history. As we uncover the lives of those within the temple, we begin to see the darker side of the night, secrets that only a select few were privy to. What were they truly experiencing during those long, quiet hours when the world outside slept and the temple's sacred power shifted beneath the veil of darkness? Ancient temples, revered as sacred spaces where mortals could commune with the divine, held an aura that extended beyond their stone walls. The belief in these places was not limited to the physical acts of worship alone. Within the hearts of those who entered, a deeper, more haunting possibility resided. These temples, at night, were not just sites of prayer, but gateways to realms beyond human understanding. As the sun set and the world outside fell silent, these hallowed spaces became something else entirely, a thin veil between the living and the dead, between the mortal world and the divine. Throughout history, countless visitors to these temples reported strange occurrences, visions, sounds, and even ghostly apparitions. To the common observer, these events were simply the work of an overactive imagination, the result of too much incense or too little sleep. But for those who dwelled in these sacred spaces, the experiences were far from ordinary. Priests and initiates who spent their nights in deep meditation or trance-like states often spoke of seeing figures from another world, gods who would appear not in the form of statues or idols, but as living, breathing beings whose presence filled the temple with an unearthly light. Some claimed to hear voices calling from the darkness, whispers that seemed to come from both within and outside the temple's walls, as if the very stones themselves were speaking. In ancient Egypt, the priests who served the great temples of Amun and Osiris believed that during the night the gods walked among them. It was said that the temples were aligned with the stars, and at certain moments, when the night sky was in perfect alignment, the boundaries between the heavens and earth would blur, allowing the gods to descend. In the stillness of the night, the priests performed their most secretive rituals, calling upon these divine beings to reveal hidden knowledge or to perform acts of spiritual healing. The temple's sacred halls were believed to be the very places where time itself could stretch and bend, where mortals could momentarily join the immortals in a sacred dance that transcended death. But it wasn't just gods who were believed to enter these temples after dark. Many cultures also believed that spirits of the dead would return, drawn to the sacredness of the space. Visitors to the temples often spoke of seeing shadows or figures that didn't quite belong, of hearing footsteps that didn't match their own. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, considered the temple not only a place to commune with the gods, but also a space where the souls of the departed could find peace or judgment. In ancient Greece, the Oracle of Delphi was known for its cryptic prophecies, often delivered in a trance, like state where the line between life and death was said to become dangerously thin. Could it be that ancient temples were not just places of worship, but portals to another dimension? Could the night reveal secrets the day could never understand? The supernatural occurrences that took place in these sacred spaces were not merely the stuff of legend, they were part of a shared belief, one that transcended cultures and time. To the ancient mind, the night was not simply the absence of light. It was a time when the veil between worlds was at its weakest, a time when the living could speak to the dead and gods could walk among mortals. Yet these supernatural experiences were not isolated to myths alone. Many accounts suggest that something far darker may have lurked in these sacred spaces, unseen forces that were neither divine nor mortal. What if the power of the night came with a price, one that would be paid by those who ventured too deeply into the unknown? What if these encounters, whether with gods, spirits, or other worldly entities, were not meant to bring enlightenment, but something far more sinister? Could the temples, in their connection to unseen realms, have held not just the promise of wisdom, but also the danger of being forever changed? The darkness of the night may have offered more than just a portal to the divine. It could have unleashed forces that no mortal was ever meant to control. Within the sacred walls of ancient temples, the truth was not always as clear-cut as it seemed. Behind the veiled rituals and divine prayers, a darker, more forbidden world thrived, one so secretive that it was intentionally erased from history. Hidden from the public eye, far from the reach of common worshippers, there existed knowledge that, if revealed, could unravel the foundations of what we thought we knew about the ancient world. These were not just ancient texts or forgotten scrolls, they were the very bedrock of a hidden society, a powerful group of elites who controlled and suppressed knowledge that was deemed too dangerous to share. What if, for millennia, the greatest secrets of these temples have been deliberately hidden from us? What truths could we uncover if we dared to dig deeper? In ancient Egypt, for example, the priests who guarded the temples were believed to have access to esoteric wisdom that extended far beyond the rituals they publicly performed. Sacred texts, written in languages lost to time, were said to contain instructions on how to commune with the gods, harness the powers of the universe, and even transcend death itself. But these texts were not for the eyes of the masses. They were locked away, hidden in secret chambers beneath the temple, often destroyed or sealed off when a new dynasty or foreign conqueror took control. The ancient Egyptians were masters of secrecy, and many believe that the most profound knowledge was deliberately suppressed, hidden from the outside world in fear that it could fall into the wrong hands, or perhaps that it was too powerful to be used by mere mortals. Similar stories emerge from the ancient temples of Greece and Mesopotamia, where texts and scrolls containing forbidden knowledge were thought to be burned or buried. These ancient cultures, too, believed that certain truths that dealt with the forces of the cosmos, the manipulation of time, and the control over human destiny, could not be shared with the general public. Some of these secrets were buried beneath the stones of the temples themselves, left to fade into obscurity. But even in their loss, they continue to intrigue us, like echoes of a time when humanity held knowledge that could alter the course of history. Why were these secrets hidden? Some suggest that it was about control. The powerful elites within these temples were not just spiritual guides, they were the ones who controlled the very knowledge that could grant individuals power. Knowledge, after all, has always been a form of power, and in these ancient societies, those who held the knowledge of the gods had the power to shape not only the lives of the people, but the very fabric of existence itself. What better way to maintain control than by keeping the most dangerous knowledge buried and out of reach? Others believe that the suppression of these ancient truths was a precautionary measure, an effort to prevent the world from unraveling under the weight of such power. Perhaps there were those who feared that if this knowledge was ever fully realized, the gods themselves might take retribution. After all, ancient myths speak of the wrath of the gods for those who dared to unlock secrets that were never meant to be known. As we consider the dark and hidden truths of these temples, we must also look at what modern scholars and archaeologists have uncovered, what fragments they have managed to find, and what questions remain unanswered. The discovery of new tombs, texts, and hidden chambers continues to offer us glimpses into this forgotten past. Yet, many of the greatest mysteries remain unsolved, locked away in the ruins, or buried beneath centuries of history. So, what if the forbidden knowledge of these temples was never truly lost, but simply hidden away, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? And what truths could we uncover if we dared to explore the darkest corners of these ancient sanctuaries? Could the secrets of the gods still be within our reach, hidden just beneath the surface of what we know? The ancient temples that dot the landscapes of the world are more than just remnants of an ancient past. They are extraordinary feats of architectural genius. At first glance, these sacred spaces may appear to be just grand stone structures designed to house rituals and honor gods. But as we look closer, it becomes clear that these temples were built with a level of precision and understanding that suggests something far beyond mere worship. There's a question that lingers in the shadows. Was the architecture of these temples merely a reflection of ancient artistry, or were they designed to harness unseen cosmic forces? Take, for example, the Great Pyramid of Giza. On the surface, it may seem like a massive tomb, a monument to the pharaohs, but what if its true purpose was far more profound? The pyramid is aligned with almost perfect precision to the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, and its corners point directly to certain stars. The Egyptians, known for their deep knowledge of the stars and the heavens, designed this temple as an alignment with the cosmos. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pharaohs were divine beings, intermediaries between the gods and the people. By aligning the pyramid with celestial bodies, they created a space that was not just earthly, but connected to the stars themselves. A space where the pharaoh could ascend to the heavens after death to join the gods in eternity. This relationship between architecture and the cosmos is not unique to Egypt. Across the world, from the temples of ancient Greece to the sacred sites in Mesopotamia, we see the same careful alignment. The Parthenon in Athens, for instance, is oriented in such a way that it faces the rising sun on certain key days of the year. In the Americas, the ancient Maya constructed their temples with intricate astronomical alignments that were used to track celestial events like solstices and eclipses. These temples were not just buildings, they were giant celestial calculators, intricately linked to the movements of the heavens. But it's not just about the alignment of the temples with the stars, it's also about the geometry and proportions used in their design. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Mesopotamians all used sacred geometry in their construction. The ratio of the sides of the Great Pyramid, for example, is nearly identical to the ratio of the Earth's circumference to its diameter. An astonishing coincidence that points to a level of understanding that we might not have expected from a civilization so long ago. The use of the golden ratio in the design of the Parthenon is another example of how these cultures infused their architecture with a sense of harmony and cosmic order. The question arises, what was the purpose of these designs? Were they simply an aesthetic choice, a reflection of the grandeur of the gods? Or were they meant to channel some kind of cosmic energy? The idea that ancient temples were built to harness unseen forces is not as far-fetched as it might seem. The careful placement of these structures, their alignment with the stars, and the use of precise geometry suggest that these ancient cultures believed that their sacred spaces could serve as portals or channels to a higher realm, allowing them to connect with the divine or tap into the powers of the universe itself. What if these temples were more than just places of worship? What if they were designed to unlock the secrets of the cosmos, to tap into the very fabric of reality itself? What if the ancient architects knew something we've forgotten? Something that allowed them to create structures that not only stood the test of time, but seemed to resonate with a hidden power. These temples may have been more than just buildings. They may have been instruments, crafted to open doors to realms beyond our understanding. With the physical structures established, let's delve into the deeper, more mysterious uses of these spaces during the night. What happened when the sun set and the stars aligned? What hidden practices took place under the cover of darkness, in the very temples that were designed to connect the heavens to the earth? The mysteries of these sacred spaces are far from over. They only deepen as we move beyond the architecture itself. The ancient temples, with their grand stone walls and towering columns, were not merely designed to house rituals or offerings. They were designed to capture the very essence of the universe. Among the most striking elements of these sacred spaces was the interplay of light and shadow, forces that, when harnessed, held the power to transform the atmosphere within the temple and shape the very experiences of those who entered. For ancient civilizations, Light was not just a physical phenomenon, but a symbol, a powerful force that bridged the mortal world and the divine. Shadow, too, was just as vital, representing the unknown, the unseen, the mysterious. Together, they played a crucial role in the rituals that unfolded within these temples, shaping the spiritual experiences of the people who dared to step into their sacred halls. Throughout history, many ancient cultures revered the moon and the celestial bodies, aligning their temples with the cycles of the heavens. The Egyptians, for example, built their temples in such a way that the sun's rays would shine directly onto the most sacred parts of the temple at certain times of the year. The light was seen as a connection between the gods and the earth, a divine force that could illuminate the path to the sacred. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pharaoh was a living god, and so the light that streamed into the temple during key moments, like the solstices, was seen as a manifestation of divine presence. These moments were often accompanied by elaborate ceremonies, where the priests would gather in the light of the sun, performing sacred rites to honor the gods. But what of the darkness? It is in the absence of light that the true mystery of the temples begins to emerge. When the sun sank beneath the horizon and the shadows deepened, the atmosphere inside the temple transformed. It became a space of profound stillness and awe. The rituals performed in the darkness were meant to transcend the physical realm, to connect with powers that were not easily understood by the human mind. In the absence of light, the boundary between the earthly and the divine grew thin. The high priests and priestesses, often cloaked in robes of shadow themselves, would lead their initiates into these sacred spaces, where the interplay of light and shadow shaped their every movement, their every word, and their every prayer. In some temples, the walls themselves seemed to come alive with the movement of shadows. Light flickered from torches or oil lamps, casting shadows across the intricately carved stone, where figures of gods, kings, and celestial beings seemed to shift with the play of light. The experience was immersive, enveloping the worshipper in an atmosphere where reality seemed to bend, and time itself appeared to stand still. The very walls of the temple seemed to whisper secrets, not through words, but through the patterns of light and shadow that danced across them. What was the purpose of this interplay? Was it simply an artistic choice, a way to create an atmosphere of awe and reverence? Or was there a deeper metaphysical reason for the careful manipulation of light and shadow within these temples? Perhaps in the darkness, the priests were able to connect with forces beyond human comprehension. It was in this shadowed space that the gods could be invoked, their voices heard in the silence of the night, and the mysteries of the universe revealed. The darkness, then, was not just the absence of light. It was a space of potential, a space where hidden truths could be uncovered. The rituals performed under the veil of night were not just about worship. They were about tapping into the unseen forces that governed the cosmos. The play of light and shadow, so carefully orchestrated by the architects and priests of these temples, was a means of unlocking a deeper understanding of the universe, a way to access knowledge that was hidden from the mortal eye. How did the play of light and shadow inside these sacred spaces shape the rituals that took place? Could the darkness have been the key to unlocking their power? These are questions that have lingered throughout history, unanswered, yet ever present. The true significance of light and shadow in the ancient temples is a mystery that continues to captivate the imagination, inviting us to explore the deeper, hidden meanings behind the spaces where the divine and the mortal intersect. Now that we understand the symbolic importance of light, let's explore what happens when these temples were left in complete darkness. What strange occurrences unfolded in the absence of light, and what mysteries were hidden in the shadows that still haunt these sacred spaces. The ancient temples, standing as silent witnesses to centuries of history, have always been a source of intrigue, wonder, and speculation. While many believe that these structures were simply places of worship, offerings, and divine connection, a deeper look reveals a wealth of mysteries that have defied explanation. What if the greatest mysteries of the ancient world still lie beneath the ruins of these temples? Could there be secrets buried within them, waiting to be unlocked? One of the most puzzling aspects of these temples is their construction. How were these massive structures built with such precision, often using stones that weighed tons, transported over vast distances? In Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a testament to the architectural mastery of the ancient Egyptians, but the true methods behind its construction remain shrouded in mystery. Some believe that advanced techniques, perhaps even lost to time, were employed in the building of these sacred spaces. The alignment of the pyramids with the stars, the mathematical precision, and the use of sacred geometry all suggest that these temples were far more than simple constructions. They were instruments designed to align with the cosmos. But how were they able to achieve such feats without the technology we assume was necessary? The answer to this question continues to elude historians and archaeologists, and many have even speculated that there may have been knowledge lost in the annals of time, knowledge that could have revolutionized our understanding of ancient engineering. Beyond the structural wonders, there are the artifacts, strange, otherworldly objects that have been found inside and around these temples. Some of these artifacts defy explanation, their purpose and origin still a mystery. The famous Dendera light from the Temple of Hathor in Egypt, for example, is often cited as an anomaly. The carvings within this temple depict what appear to be intricate lamps or even electric light bulbs, yet such technology was far beyond the reach of ancient Egyptians. Could these objects have served a purpose that we simply cannot understand in our modern context? Or do they point to something even more extraordinary? A glimpse into lost technologies or ancient wisdom that has yet to be uncovered. And then there are the rituals themselves. Many ancient texts, inscribed on stone walls or hidden in ancient scrolls, speak of strange ceremonies and gods long forgotten. Some of these rituals have left behind only cryptic references, leading to even more questions than answers. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, for example, offers a roadmap to the afterlife, but it also alludes to secret rites that were conducted deep within the temple sanctuaries, rites that no one outside the priesthood could ever witness. What happened in these sacred, closed-off spaces? Were these rituals simply prayers and offerings, or were they part of a deeper, more secretive practice? One that might have involved divine forces, powerful magic, or even attempts to manipulate the very fabric of reality. In the ruins of ancient temples, historians continue to find tantalizing clues that suggest something far more complex than simple worship. In Mesopotamia, for instance, the ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that once towered over the landscape, were thought to be gateways between earth and the heavens. These temples, constructed to honor gods like Marduk, were designed to channel divine energy, but they also hint at a deeper, more esoteric function. Ancient texts describe these structures as places of power, where rituals performed could alter the fate of entire cities or empires. Did the priests of these temples hold the power to change the course of history through their ceremonies? Were the ziggurats truly built to connect the mortal world with the divine, or was there something else at play? Something we have yet to fully grasp. The mysteries of the temples are not confined to the far-off past, they persist today. Modern-day researchers, armed with advanced technologies like ground-penetrating radar and 3D imaging, continue to uncover anomalies in these sacred spaces that suggest hidden chambers, lost tombs, and undiscovered relics. Some temples, like those in Angkor Wat, are being re-examined with new tools, revealing details and secrets that had been previously overlooked. Is it possible that entire parts of these temples remain hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be discovered? If so, what will these discoveries reveal about the true purpose of these sacred sites? What is certain is that the full truth about these temples has yet to be revealed. The more we uncover, the more questions arise. Were these spaces simply places of divine worship, or were they designed to do something far greater? Were they centers of knowledge, hidden away to protect their secrets from the world? The answers to these questions may be buried deep within the stones of the temples themselves, waiting for the day when the right person, with the right tools and knowledge, uncovers them. As we uncover these mysteries, one question remains: what will it take to truly understand the ancient secrets that these temples guard? Could it be that the greatest discoveries are yet to come, waiting for us to unlock them? The answer, perhaps, lies in the ruins themselves, waiting in the shadows, hidden from the world, until the time is right for the truth to be revealed. The ancient temples, often seen as places of worship and reverence, hold a much deeper connection to the universe than we tend to realize. These sacred spaces were not merely built to house rituals or offerings. They were constructed as bridges between humanity and the cosmos, carefully designed to align with celestial events. The ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Maya, used their deep understanding of the stars to guide the construction of temples that not only connected them to the divine, but also to the very movements of the heavens. What if these temples weren't just designed for prayer, but to align humanity with the stars themselves. What if the night sky held the key to their true purpose? Take the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example. One of the most iconic and enigmatic structures of the ancient world. The pyramid was not just an architectural feat. It was a masterwork of astronomical engineering. The ancient Egyptians meticulously aligned the pyramid to the cardinal points, ensuring that its sides faced precisely north, south, east, and west. This alignment was not simply for aesthetic purposes, it reflected a deeper connection to the stars. The pyramid's position is thought to be aligned with the stars in Orion's belt, a constellation associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. This connection to the stars wasn't just symbolic, it was spiritual. The Egyptians believed that the pharaohs, as living gods, would ascend to the stars upon their death, and the pyramid acted as a cosmic gateway to the afterlife. In this way, the Great Pyramid was not only a tomb, but a portal that connected the mortal realm with the divine. This concept wasn't exclusive to Egypt. Across the globe, ancient cultures embedded celestial knowledge into the very foundation of their temples. In ancient Greece, the Parthenon was constructed with remarkable precision, aligning with the solstices and equinoxes. The temple was not only dedicated to the goddess Athena, but also designed to reflect the cosmic cycles. The movement of the sun across the sky dictated the timing of religious festivals, with the temple's architecture providing a physical manifestation of the connection between the heavens and the earth. The use of sacred geometry in its design wasn't merely an artistic choice. It reflected the divine order of the universe, where architecture, astronomy, and spirituality converged. In Britain, the megalithic stone circle of Stonehenge is another example of a temple with astronomical significance. Built over 5,000 years ago, Stonehenge's stones are arranged with precise alignments to the solstices, and the sightlines of the stone circle point directly to the sun's path as it rises and sets. It is believed that this ancient site was not just a place of worship, but an astronomical observatory. Stonehenge functioned as a tool to track the movements of the sun and moon, aligning its ritual practices with the changing seasons. The stone circle was a physical representation of humanity's attempt to sync with the celestial rhythms, marking the passage of time and the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The Maya civilization, too, constructed temples and observatories with the stars in mind. The ancient city of Uxmal in Mexico is a prime example of this astronomical alignment. The Pyramid of the Magician at Uxmal is aligned with the setting sun during specific times of the year, allowing the Maya to track the solstices and equinoxes with remarkable accuracy. These alignments were crucial for their agricultural calendar, as the Maya relied heavily on the cycles of the moon and sun to guide their planting and harvesting. Just as the Egyptians and Greeks did, the Maya used their temples to mirror the movement of the stars, turning their sacred spaces into instruments of cosmic understanding. What these examples reveal is a profound connection between the earthbound temples and the celestial world above. The ancient builders, using knowledge passed down through generations, constructed spaces that were not only for religious ceremonies, but also for understanding and harnessing the power of the cosmos. These temples were carefully placed in alignment with the heavens, creating a direct link between the divine and the mortal. The structures were designed not simply as places of worship, but as tools to unlock the mysteries of the universe, offering a tangible connection between humanity and the stars. As we explore the celestial alignments of these ancient temples, let's turn our attention to the role of astrology in the rituals that unfolded within their sacred walls. Could these temples have been more than just physical spaces? Could they have been conduits for spiritual and cosmic energy, guiding the lives of those who worshipped within them? The deeper we look, the more we begin to understand the complex relationship these ancient cultures had with the cosmos, and how it shaped their religious practices, their understanding of the divine, and their very lives. Could astrology have been more than just superstition to the ancients? What if their understanding of the stars shaped every decision, every victory, and every tragedy? For many ancient civilizations, the study of the stars was not a matter of curiosity, but a deeply spiritual science, one that allowed priests and rulers to interpret the divine will and navigate the course of their lives and kingdoms. Temples were not only sacred spaces for prayer and offerings, but also observatories and centers for astrological readings, where the celestial movements were seen as direct messages from the gods. The Egyptians, known for their profound reverence of the cosmos, integrated astrology deeply into their religious practices. The rising and setting of stars like Sirius were central to their calendar and the agricultural cycles that governed their lives. The heliacal rising of Sirius, which marked the annual flooding of the Nile, was not just a seasonal event. It was believed to be a divine signal. The priests used this astronomical event to forecast the floods, which were crucial for the fertility of the land. But beyond agriculture, astrology also served as a tool to interpret omens and divine messages. Pharaohs consulted astrologers to determine the most auspicious times for battle, coronations, or major state decisions. They believed that the alignment of the stars directly influenced the outcome of these events, making astrology a key aspect of governance. The priests, as intermediaries between the gods and the rulers, interpreted celestial signs to guide the king's decisions, believing that fate itself was written in the stars. In Mesopotamia, the ancient Babylonians took astrology to an even more detailed level. Their priests observed the movements of the planets, the moon, and the stars, not merely for agricultural purposes, but to predict the future. These astrological readings were often woven into the fabric of governance. Kings, such as those of Babylon, would rely on astrologers to determine the best time for military campaigns or diplomatic negotiations, believing that the stars held the key to victory or defeat. The Babylonians were perhaps the first to create detailed star charts, mapping out the heavens and linking celestial phenomena to earthly events. The diviners and astrologers within the temples could predict weather patterns, wars, and even royal births. In their eyes, the stars didn't just influence destiny, they controlled it. Even in ancient Greece, astrology was not just a practice for the mystical, but an accepted science intertwined with philosophy and religion. The Greeks believed in the influence of the stars on the human soul and the fate of individuals. Temples dedicated to gods like Apollo, who was associated with prophecy, were centers for both spiritual and astrological consultation. Priests at the Oracle of Delphi, for instance, did not simply receive divine messages, they also interpreted celestial signs to provide guidance. Whether through the movement of planets or the appearance of comets, these signs were believed to offer direct communication from the gods. It was a form of divine guidance that helped shape the course of history, influencing everything from the fate of armies to the personal destinies of kings and commoners alike. But astrology in ancient times went beyond the realm of politics and governance. It also played a critical role in healing practices. The ancient cultures believed that the movements of the stars and planets affected not just the material world, but the health of individuals as well. In ancient Egypt, the priests would often consult the stars before making medical decisions, as they believed that the alignment of celestial bodies could indicate the optimal time for healing or surgery. The idea of fate and destiny was deeply connected to health and well-being. If the stars were aligned, healing could be achieved. If they were out of alignment, illness or suffering could be the result. Even in warfare, astrology held power. Ancient leaders often consulted the stars before embarking on military campaigns, believing that certain celestial alignments could determine the success or failure of their efforts. The Battle of Gaugamela, where Alexander the Great faced the Persian Empire, was not just a conflict of armies, it was a battle that, according to some, had the stars on Alexander's side. The Macedonian king and his generals, trained in astrology, may have believed that the stars themselves had ordained the outcome of this decisive moment in history. As these ancient cultures used astrology to shape their decisions, they also believed that the stars held a cosmic order, a divine will that could influence the fate of individuals and nations. The alignment of the planets was not mere coincidence, it was an ongoing communication between humanity and the gods, a reminder that the cosmos was not a random collection of stars, but a vast interconnected system where every movement had meaning. With astrology serving as a cosmic guide, what role did it play in shaping the rituals that took place in these temples during the dark hours of the night? How did these celestial readings influence the actions of the priests, the timing of sacred ceremonies, and the messages received from the gods? The answers may lie in the mysteries that these ancient temples continue to guard, secrets that remain hidden in the stars, waiting to be unlocked by those who dare to look beyond the heavens. What if these rituals weren't just about appeasing the gods, but about controlling fate itself? Were these temple rituals designed to alter the course of history? This question echoes throughout the ancient world, where the heavens were not simply a realm of distant stars, but a force that could shape the very fabric of reality. In the sacred temples, where astrology and spirituality intersected, the movement of celestial bodies was believed to hold profound power that could be harnessed during critical moments to influence not only the course of personal destinies, but the fate of entire nations. Ancient priests, equipped with an intimate understanding of the stars, planets, and cosmic events, performed rituals during specific astrological occurrences that were seen as crucial moments of divine intervention. Eclipses, planetary alignments, and the movements of particular stars were not just seen as natural events, they were seen as celestial signals, carrying divine messages or opportunities for change. These were times when the veil between the earthly realm and the divine was believed to be thinnest, when the forces of fate could be steered in one direction or another. In ancient Egypt, eclipses were considered powerful omens. The Egyptians were particularly attuned to the movements of the sun and moon, seeing them as manifestations of the gods themselves. Re, the sun god, and Thoth, the moon god, ruled over time and fate. During a solar eclipse, when the sun was swallowed by darkness, priests would gather in the temples to perform elaborate ceremonies, often involving prayers, sacrifices, and rituals designed to restore the sun's light. The eclipse was a moment of cosmic upheaval, a symbolic death and rebirth of Ra, and the priests believed that through their actions they could influence the return of the sun, thus maintaining the balance between order and chaos. These rituals weren't just about appeasing the gods, they were seen as essential acts of control, of guiding the forces of nature back into harmony. Similarly, the movement of the planets and stars played a key role in the rituals of Mesopotamia. The Babylonians, perhaps the most skilled astrologers of the ancient world, charted the movements of the stars and planets in incredible detail. They believed that these movements influenced everything from the fate of kings to the health of crops. When a rare planetary alignment occurred, the priests would perform rituals in the temple to seek the favor of the gods, often making sacrifices or offering prayers for prosperity, peace, or victory in war. These alignments, considered to be moments of cosmic significance, were seen as the perfect opportunity to influence the future. The priest's ability to interpret these events was viewed as a divine gift, allowing them to manipulate the course of destiny itself. One of the most famous examples of astrological influence on ritual can be found in the ancient Greek temples, particularly in Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi, one of the most important religious centers in the ancient world, was thought to channel the voice of the god Apollo. The high priestess, known as the Pythia, would enter a trance-like state, often induced by the intoxicating vapors that arose from a fissure in the ground, and deliver prophecies. But what many don't realize is that these prophecies were often tied to astrological events. The priestesses would consult the stars to choose the best time for receiving divine messages. The Greeks believed that certain planetary alignments, or lunar phases, were necessary to unlock the full potential of the gods' insight. In this way, astrology was not just a tool for forecasting, it was integral to the functioning of the temple, ensuring that the right cosmic energies were in place to bring the gods' will into the world. The Maya, too, used astrology to guide their rituals, particularly in their great pyramids and temples. The Maya were exceptional astronomers, with a sophisticated understanding of the cycles of the moon, Venus, and the stars. Certain times of the year, such as the zenithal sun, when the sun passed directly overhead, were believed to be moments of great spiritual significance. During these times, the priests would perform rituals that not only honored the gods, but also aimed to ensure the continued prosperity of the people. The alignments of Venus, which appeared as both the morning and evening star, played a central role in Maya rituals, symbolizing both the beginning and the end of cycles. Through their understanding of the stars, the priests could predict favorable times for planting crops, launching military campaigns, or even predicting disasters. In each of these ancient cultures, the connection between astrology and ritual was not merely about understanding the natural world, it was about influencing it. The rituals performed during celestial events were seen as powerful acts of divine intervention, where the priests and priestesses used their knowledge of the stars to change the course of history. These ceremonies often involved sacrifice, both of animals, and sometimes even humans, offering them to the gods in exchange for their favor. The act of sacrifice, particularly during these key moments, was seen as an offering to ensure that the cosmic forces would align in the favor of the people, their rulers, and their land. This deep connection between astrology and the divine will raise profound questions about the ancient view of fate and control. Were the movements of the stars simply divine signs, or did these rituals serve a deeper purpose, one that could truly alter the course of history? The belief that the heavens could influence fate suggests that the ancients saw the stars not just as distant lights in the sky, but as living forces that could shape their lives. And in their hands, through the rituals they conducted in their sacred temples, was the power to manipulate these forces, to bend them to their will. Now that we've seen how astrology influenced temple rituals, let's examine the role of sacred texts and symbols that help to preserve these secrets for generations. Could these ancient texts hold the keys to understanding how these rituals worked, and why the stars held such power over the people of the past? And how did these sacred writings survive centuries of change, war, and destruction? Let's explore what knowledge was passed down, and what was lost to time. What if these sacred texts weren't just stories, but encoded messages meant to protect humanity from forces beyond our understanding? For centuries, ancient texts were not simply religious guides or myths, but repositories of deep, hidden knowledge, wisdom that was carefully guarded by the priesthoods of ancient temples. Inscribed on walls, carved into stone tablets, or sealed in forgotten chambers, these texts held secrets that went far beyond the rituals and prayers they contained. They were a key to understanding the universe, unlocking the power of the gods, and, in some cases, even manipulating the forces of fate itself. Take, for instance, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This sacred text, found inscribed within the walls of the pyramids and tombs of Egypt, was far more than a guide for the deceased to navigate the afterlife. While many know it as a collection of spells for safe passage through the underworld, the Book of the Dead also served as an encoded manual for divine knowledge, containing instructions on how to invoke gods, communicate with spirits, and access the hidden realms of the universe. The priests who studied these texts held the keys to both life and death, interpreting the ancient scripts not just for the benefit of the dead, but for the living as well. These texts, carefully protected within the temple walls, were not meant for the eyes of ordinary people. They were understood only by the high priests, the chosen few who could wield the knowledge contained within them. Similarly, in the temples of ancient India, sacred texts like the Vedas were inscribed on the temple walls or kept hidden in the inner sanctum of the temples. The Vedas contained not just hymns and prayers, but complex instructions on how to align with the cosmic order. These texts were used by the priests to maintain the balance between the gods and humanity, to communicate with celestial forces, and to tap into the power of creation. In these sacred spaces, the Vedic scriptures were more than just written words. They were instruments of power, containing the blueprint for the universe itself. The language of the Vedas, intricate and sacred, was believed to hold the secret to the divine, the sound of creation, the rhythm of the cosmos. Many of these sacred texts were veiled in symbols, codes, and complex metaphors that obscured their true meaning from those uninitiated in the ways of the temple. The high priests would interpret these symbols, unlocking their hidden meanings and using them in their rituals to invoke the gods. These symbols, inscribed on the walls of temples, were not just decorative, they were divine codes, meant to preserve the sacred knowledge and protect it from those who would misuse it. The symbols themselves were part of a larger system of divine order, linking the temple's architecture, its rituals, and the cosmic forces that govern the universe. What these sacred texts, inscriptions, and symbols reveal is that the temples were not just physical spaces, they were vessels of hidden knowledge. They were designed to protect and preserve the wisdom of the gods, passing it down to a select few who were entrusted with its power. This knowledge was not meant to be understood by everyone, but only by those who had undergone the rigorous training and initiation required to interpret it. To the uninitiated, these sacred texts and symbols would remain a mystery, arcane and incomprehensible. With these texts holding sacred secrets, let's explore the role of the temples themselves as conduits for this hidden knowledge during the nighttime. These sacred spaces, bathed in darkness, may have been more than just places of ritual worship. They could have been sanctuaries where the secrets of the universe were unlocked, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek the truth. Did the ancient temples really hold secret chambers that contained the most forbidden knowledge? What did they guard that was too dangerous for the world to know? Deep within the hallowed walls of these sacred sites, beyond the grand altars and public spaces, were chambers known only to a select few, hidden away from the eyes of outsiders and protected by priests or temple guardians. These chambers were not mere storage rooms or storage spaces for sacred objects. They were sanctuaries of the most powerful and often dangerous knowledge, believed to hold the secrets that could shape the destiny of the world itself. In Egypt, for instance, the Great Pyramid of Giza, with its labyrinthine passageways and hidden chambers, is shrouded in mystery. Archaeologists have long speculated about secret chambers that may still lie undiscovered, possibly containing not just treasure but esoteric knowledge. Some believe these hidden spaces were used by the highest-ranking priests for secretive rituals, perhaps those that connected the earthly realm to the divine. It is said that these chambers could only be accessed by those with sacred knowledge, protected by rites that ensured only the purest of souls could enter. What secrets could such chambers hold? Were they places where the most powerful rituals were performed, where the priests communicated directly with the gods, or where forbidden artifacts, tools of unimaginable power, were kept hidden from the public? Similar stories are found in the temples of India, where hidden sanctuaries inside some of the most famous temples are said to have concealed the deepest spiritual practices. The inner sanctums of these temples, often sealed off and only accessible to the high priests, were thought to contain the most sacred and powerful knowledge that could bring the priest into direct communion with the divine, or possibly even allow them to control forces beyond mortal comprehension. Could these hidden chambers have housed relics so powerful that they were kept from the eyes of the world? Were they guarded by secret rituals, keeping them safe from those who would misuse their power? The story of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, too, is filled with whispers of hidden chambers. The Bible speaks of the Ark of the Covenant, believed to be kept in the Holy of Holies, a room in the temple that was off-limits to everyone except the high priest. The Ark was said to contain the most sacred relics, the divine laws given to Moses, and perhaps something far more powerful, a physical representation of God's covenant with humanity. But was the Holy of Holies the only secret chamber in Solomon's temple? What other mysteries did the temple guard, perhaps forgotten over time, but never truly lost? These secret chambers were not just spaces of containment, they were spaces of power, places where the line between the divine and the mortal was said to thin. It is in these spaces that the most sacred and dangerous rituals may have been performed. Rituals that could alter the course of history, bend the forces of nature, or even unlock the very fabric of reality itself. Were these chambers used to house divine power, or were they designed to keep it hidden, protected from the world for fear of the consequences if it were to be misused? As we explore the secrets within these chambers, it's time to ask, did the night itself hold the power to reveal what was once hidden? The darkness of the night, with its silence and stillness, may have been the perfect veil for these powerful rituals, conducted when the world outside slept, when the temple was empty, and the only sound was the echo of footsteps on stone. The very stillness of night may have been the key to unlocking these secret chambers, to revealing the knowledge and power that lay within. What remains hidden in the shadows of these ancient temples? Secrets, waiting for the right moment to be uncovered. What if the night wasn't just a time for sleep, but a time for transformation? What if the dark hours held the key to unlocking the most sacred truths? To many ancient civilizations, night was not a simple absence of light. It was a profound and sacred time, a doorway through which the gods themselves could descend into the mortal world. Far from being feared, darkness was revered, seen as a powerful and mysterious force that bridged the gap between humanity and the divine. It was in the stillness of the night that the most profound spiritual transformations were believed to occur, and the veil between the physical and spiritual realms was said to be at its thinnest. In ancient Egypt, night had a deeply spiritual significance, especially in relation to Osiris, the god of the underworld and resurrection. Osiris was associated with the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and his realm was not just a place of judgment, but also a gateway to eternal life. The Egyptians believed that night was a reflection of Osiris' domain, a time when the soul could travel freely between worlds. As the sun set and the darkness of night spread across the land, the Egyptians would perform rituals and prayers to honor Osiris, seeking his protection for the journey into the afterlife. Darkness, in this context, was not the realm of fear or evil, but a sacred space where the soul could be renewed and reborn. Similarly, in ancient Greece, the night was connected to the mysteries of the underworld and the god Hades. The Greeks believed that the night was a time when the gods could reveal their deepest secrets. During the night, the boundary between the mortal and divine realms was blurred, and the unseen forces of the cosmos could communicate with humanity. It was during this time that the most powerful rituals, like the Eleusinian mysteries, were conducted in secret. These rituals, believed to have been a form of divine revelation, were thought to open the mind to spiritual truths that could not be accessed during the day. Just as in Egypt, night was seen as a time of transition, where life and death, light and shadow were interwoven. The concept of the night as a portal to the divine extended far beyond Egypt and Greece. In many ancient cultures, darkness was seen as a time for personal transformation. The ancient Hebrews, for instance, often associated the night with moments of divine revelation. The prophet Daniel, in the Old Testament, received visions of the future during the night, and it was under the cover of darkness that many of the most significant spiritual experiences occurred. Similarly, in the Far East, the concept of yin, the feminine receptive force, was often linked to the night. The quiet and stillness of the dark hours were seen as a time to connect with the divine and to seek enlightenment. What these ancient beliefs share is a profound reverence for the night, seeing it not as a time to be feared, but as a sacred, transformative period that could unlock hidden knowledge. In the darkness, the soul could journey into realms beyond the physical world, where the gods could be encountered, and the mysteries of life, death, and the cosmos revealed. The night was not a time to sleep. It was a time to awaken to something greater, a time when the divine could reach down and touch the mortal world. Now that we understand the spiritual significance of night, let's explore how this belief shaped the rituals performed in temples. After the sun went down, how did these ancient peoples harness the power of the night in their sacred spaces? What transformative experiences did they believe they could access in the darkness of the temple? The answers may hold the key to understanding the true power of night itself, and the rituals that were conducted to unlock the secrets hidden in the dark. What if the shadows inside these ancient temples weren't mere tricks of light, but vessels of divine knowledge? Could the darkness have been a guide to spiritual awakening? For the ancient peoples who constructed these temples, shadows were not simply an absence of light. They were believed to be manifestations of spiritual forces deeply entwined with the hidden, the unknown, and the unseen. Shadows held a profound power, one that could reveal secrets to those who understood their significance. The interplay between light and shadow was not just a physical phenomenon, but a spiritual one, and it played a pivotal role in the rituals conducted within the sacred walls of these temples. The darkness inside ancient temples was not merely a backdrop to rituals. It was seen as a sacred space in which participants could connect with realms beyond the material world. The shadows that filled the temple's halls were thought to be infused with divine energy, acting as vessels for the gods and spirits to move through. In some traditions, the very act of entering the darkness of the temple was a symbolic journey, a descent into the unknown that would allow the participant to commune with forces outside of ordinary perception. This was not a place for casual worship. It was a space for transformation, where one could venture into the depths of the self, seeking hidden wisdom and guidance. The Egyptians, for example, saw shadows as a manifestation of the god Osiris, the lord of the underworld. In the rituals performed during the night, priests would enter the temple's shadowy interior, where they believed they could make contact with the divine realms. Through chants, offerings, and prayers, they would attempt to merge with the shadows, to become one with the very essence of Osiris. This ritual of merging with the shadow symbolized the journey of death and rebirth, where the darkness of the underworld was not feared, but embraced as a path to spiritual awakening. The shadows, in this context, were seen as the intermediary between the human world and the divine, a bridge between life and death, the known and the unknown. Similarly, in ancient Greece, the concept of shadows was closely tied to the idea of Hades, the god of the underworld. The Greeks believed that during certain rites, the shadows held the power to reveal hidden truths. In the temples dedicated to Hades, priests and initiates would enter a trance-like state, using the shadows as a medium through which they could communicate with spirits and deities. The darkness in these temples was not seen as oppressive or malevolent. but as a sacred tool to access knowledge that lay beyond the reach of the conscious mind. In the shadows, the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred, and the mysteries of the cosmos could be unlocked. The shadows, too, played a central role in the rituals of the ancient Maya. The Maya constructed their temples with an understanding of the interplay between light and shadow, carefully designing them so that the movement of the sun during certain times of the year would cast specific shadows across the temple stone surfaces. During these moments, the priests would perform sacred ceremonies, interpreting the shadows as signs from the gods. The Maya believed that the shadows were a form of spiritual communication, a language through which the divine could speak to the people. For the Maya, the shadow was not just an absence of light. It was a powerful, living force that guided their rituals and helped them navigate the spiritual world. In these traditions, the act of merging with the shadow was not merely symbolic. It was a ritualistic journey, a means of connecting with the divine on a deeper level. By embracing the shadows, the participants believed they could enter a space where the veil between the mortal world and the divine world was lifted. In these sacred moments, the darkness was not feared, but revered as a powerful, transformative force that could bring clarity, wisdom, and enlightenment. As we explore the role of shadows, let's turn to the most profound and mysterious ritual that many ancient civilizations believed could be performed only in the dark hours: communication with the divine. What was it about the darkness, the very absence of light, that allowed these cultures to connect with realms beyond their understanding? Could the shadows truly hold the key to unlocking the hidden knowledge of the gods? The secrets of these ancient rituals are waiting to be uncovered, but they can only be understood by those who dare to explore the shadows within these sacred spaces. Could the night have been the only time when humans could truly speak to the gods? Were these encounters real, or were they the product of powerful ritualistic trance? These are questions that have echoed through time, especially when considering the extraordinary claims of spiritual experiences that were said to occur during the dark hours within ancient temples. To many ancient cultures, the night was a sacred time when the veil between the mortal realm and the divine realm grew thin. It was during these hours, in the silence of darkness, that priests and priestesses believed they could enter direct communion with the gods, spirits, and even ancestors, experiences that were seen as the most powerful and sacred forms of spiritual interaction. The ancient Egyptians were among the first to recognize the spiritual power of the night. The temples dedicated to gods like Osiris, Horus, and Isis were more than just physical spaces. They were portals to the divine. Priests performed intricate rituals under the cover of night, often entering a trance-like state to receive divine messages. These rituals, conducted in the darkest chambers of the temple, were designed to align the priest's spirit with the cosmic forces of the universe, allowing them to receive communication from the gods. The Egyptians believed that during the night, the god Osiris, ruler of the afterlife, would traverse the underworld, and that through their rituals they could tap into his divine power. In the darkness, where the visible world gave way to the unseen, priests would enter an altered state of consciousness, seeking guidance from Osiris and the ancestors. These nocturnal rituals were seen as essential to maintaining the balance between life and death, as well as ensuring the favor of the gods. Similarly, in ancient Greece, temples dedicated to gods like Apollo and Dionysus were believed to be the site of powerful divine encounters. The famous Oracle of Delphi, for example, was a place where the high priestess, Pythia, would enter a trance, often induced by inhaling vapors from a fissure in the earth. This trance allowed her to speak the words of Apollo, relaying prophecies that guided kings and warriors alike. But the true nature of these encounters was not always clear. Some scholars argue that Pythia's visions were the result of spiritual communication with the gods, while others suggest that they were induced by ritualistic practices. The fact remains, however, that these encounters were regarded as sacred moments, when the boundary between human consciousness and divine insight was breached, and it was in the darkened, sacred spaces of the temple that these divine messages were believed to be received. In ancient Mesopotamia, the rituals performed in the darkness of the night were also tied to direct communication with the gods. The Babylonians, for example, believed that the stars were not just celestial objects, but divine beings who could influence the fate of the world. The priests of Babylon would study the movements of the planets, stars, and constellations to predict the future. But more than just reading the stars, they believed they could communicate with these celestial forces. During certain planetary alignments or eclipses, they would perform elaborate ceremonies in the temple's inner sanctum, often under the cover of night. These rituals were seen as a means of invoking divine power, with the priests using their knowledge of the stars to facilitate direct communication with the gods. In these moments, the priests were believed to cross the boundary between the mortal and divine worlds, entering a realm where the gods themselves could be consulted and their wills made clear. Even in ancient India, the darkness of the night played a crucial role in spiritual practices. In temples dedicated to gods like Shiva and Vishnu, the night was seen as a time of intense spiritual power. The darkness, far from being a time of fear, was a time when devotees could more easily commune with the divine. Rituals in the temples would often begin at twilight and continue until the first light of dawn, with devotees chanting mantras, offering prayers, and making sacrifices to the gods. The night, in this context, was not simply a backdrop to worship. It was a time when the gods were thought to be most accessible, when the spiritual energy of the universe could be tapped into more effectively. The darkness of the temple became a sacred space, a place where the mundane world could be left behind, and the devotee could seek union with the divine. What all of these cultures share is a deep belief that the night was not just a time of sleep, but a sacred period in which the human soul could transcend the limitations of the physical world. In these moments of darkness, the veil between the mortal and the divine was lifted, allowing for profound encounters with gods, spirits, and ancestors. These experiences, whether induced through trance, ritual, or divine intervention, were seen as the pinnacle of spiritual achievement, offering the promise of guidance, transformation, and enlightenment. Having witnessed the divine encounters that occurred under the cover of night, we now ask, what role did these powerful rituals play in the culture and power of ancient temples? How did these spiritual experiences influence the daily lives of those who sought guidance from the gods? And what was the true purpose of these temples, if not to serve as the conduits between the mortal realm and the divine? The answers to these questions lie in the rituals themselves, and in the mysterious, sacred spaces where the boundaries between life, death, and the divine were so easily crossed. Could the high priests of ancient temples have been more than just religious leaders? What if their rituals were designed to give them control over life and death itself? In the grand scheme of ancient societies, a high priest or priestess was often more than just a figurehead of religious devotion. They were intermediaries between the divine and the mortal realms, the ones entrusted with sacred knowledge and powers that could influence everything from the fate of crops to the very fate of kingdoms. Their role, however, went beyond simple worship. It was deeply rooted in a mystic, almost supernatural understanding of the universe. Through their rituals and sacred practices, these spiritual leaders held the keys to unlocking forces that shaped the world. In ancient Egypt, the high priests held immense authority, particularly within the grand temples dedicated to gods like Ammon, Osiris, and Ra. These priests were more than just religious leaders. They were political power brokers, advisors to the pharaohs, and gatekeepers of divine knowledge. The high priest of Ammon, for example, was one of the most powerful men in Egypt, second only to the pharaoh. It was believed that these high priests were privy to secret rituals that could influence not only the spiritual well-being of the people, but also the very order of nature itself. The rituals performed within these temples were considered to maintain harmony between the gods and humans, ensuring the favor of the gods and the prosperity of the land. But these rituals often went beyond offerings and prayers. They involved esoteric knowledge that only the high priests could interpret and perform. Through their deep understanding of divine will, they wielded an almost supernatural power to control events, guide the seasons, and influence the prosperity of the state. Similarly, in Greece, the role of the high priest was one of great reverence and influence. At the Oracle of Delphi, for example, the high priestess, known as the Pythia, was believed to be the conduit for Apollo's voice. Her prophecies shaped the fate of entire civilizations, and leaders from across the ancient world would seek her guidance before embarking on military campaigns or making key political decisions. It wasn't just her ability to predict the future that made her powerful. It was the belief that she was channeling the will of the gods. The Pythia's trance, like states, induced by the vapors rising from the earth, were thought to open a gateway to the divine realm, allowing her to access knowledge that transcended the mortal world. The high priests and priestesses at Delphi were seen as possessing not just spiritual insight, but the ability to shape the fate of nations by aligning themselves with the will of the gods. The training of these high priests was rigorous and often shrouded in secrecy. In many cultures, they were chosen for their spiritual purity and their ability to access realms beyond ordinary perception. For instance, in Egypt, young boys were selected to become priests, trained in the sacred arts, the languages of the gods, and the secret rituals that connected them with the divine. They would study under the tutelage of the highest-ranking priests, learning how to interpret omens, perform rituals, and communicate with the gods through complex ceremonial acts. These priests were the keepers of sacred texts, hidden within the temple walls, and were thought to be able to read the cosmic forces that govern both human lives and the natural world. In Mesopotamia, the role of the high priest was similarly multifaceted. The priesthood was deeply intertwined with the politics of the state, and the high priests often played crucial roles in guiding the king's decisions, particularly during times of crisis. The priests interpreted celestial omens, using astrology and divination to forecast the future and advise the king on matters of war, governance, and agriculture. In fact, the power of the high priest was so profound that it was said that they could influence the fate of entire empires through their divine connections. Kings and rulers sought their counsel not just for spiritual guidance, but for practical advice that could determine the fate of their kingdoms. But the true extent of their power lay in their control of sacred knowledge. This knowledge wasn't meant for the masses. Only those with the right training and divine blessing could access the secrets of the gods. These hidden teachings, passed down through generations, were encoded in sacred texts, symbols, and rituals that could unlock the forces of the universe. The high priests were the gatekeepers of this knowledge, and through their rites, they could manipulate the very fabric of reality. Whether it was through invoking gods, reading the stars, or performing powerful rituals, these figures held the ability to shape not only the future, but the destiny of humankind. While the high priests were the face of spiritual power, there were deeper secrets hidden within the temples. Let's dive into the mysterious sources of power they were believed to harness. What knowledge and rituals lay hidden behind the closed doors of the inner sanctums of the temples? What was concealed from the general public? And what power did the high priests truly wield? What if the sacred tools used by high priests weren't mere symbols, but powerful artifacts that could control divine forces? Could these objects still hold secrets lost to time? Throughout ancient civilizations, sacred tools and artifacts were considered more than just ceremonial objects. They were believed to be conduits of divine power, capable of unlocking hidden realms and connecting the priest to gods, spirits, and cosmic forces. These sacred relics, whether it was the Ankh in Egypt, the sacred vessels in Greece, or the mysterious relics used by ancient Mesopotamian priests, were not only symbols of authority, they were tools of profound spiritual power, wielded in the most sacred rituals, often under the cover of night. In ancient Egypt, the Ankh is perhaps the most iconic of these sacred objects. This symbol, resembling a cross with a loop at the top, was not just a representation of life, but a powerful tool that high priests used to channel divine energy. The Ankh was believed to embody the essence of immortality, and during ritual ceremonies, it was used to invoke the gods, particularly Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Priests would hold the Ankh in their hands while performing sacred rites, using it to bless the dead, bestow life upon offerings, and even open portals to the divine realms. Some legends suggest that the Ankh itself was a key to the hidden knowledge of the gods, an object that could transcend the earthly realm and open the gates to the afterlife. When used during the rituals at night, it was believed that the Ankh's power was amplified, as the darkness was seen as the most sacred and powerful time for spiritual connections. Similarly, in ancient Greece, sacred vessels and objects used in temples were not just symbols of worship, they were believed to hold the power to communicate with the divine. One such artifact was the sacred tripod at Delphi, used by the Oracle of Delphi during her trance-like states. The tripod, from which the Pythia delivered her prophecies, was seen as a conduit for Apollo's divine voice. The oracle would sit upon the tripod, believed to be imbued with the energy of the god, and through it she would channel Apollo's will. The tripod was more than just a seat. It was an instrument of divine revelation, an object that allowed the priestess to cross into a realm where she could commune with the gods. The ancient Greeks also used ritualistic items, like sacred knives and cauldrons in their temples, believing that these tools could direct cosmic energies and summon divine intervention. These sacred vessels were used in both sacrifices and in the purification rituals, where they would be filled with offerings intended to appease gods and spirits. In Mesopotamia, the high priests of the Babylonian and Sumerian temples utilized sacred tools that were believed to possess unimaginable power. One of the most significant artifacts was the Tablet of Destinies, a sacred object mentioned in Babylonian mythology. It was believed that this tablet held the key to controlling the fate of the gods and the universe itself. Priests would perform secret rituals with the tablet, attempting to divine the will of the gods and influence the fate of their city or kingdom. These rituals, often held in the darkness of night, were seen as powerful enough to alter the course of history. Alongside the Tablet of Destinies, other sacred items like ceremonial daggers, incense burners, and ritualistic stones were used to invoke divine power and control the forces of nature. The Mesopotamians believed that the very essence of the gods resided within these objects, and by using them correctly, they could influence everything from the weather to the outcome of wars. The role of these sacred tools was not just to facilitate rituals, they were seen as active participants in the spiritual process. When wielded by the high priests in their secretive ceremonies, often conducted at night, these objects were believed to channel divine forces and bring the mortal realm into alignment with the gods. The objects themselves were thought to be imbued with supernatural properties, some capable of healing, others capable of protecting, and still others believed to be keys to unlocking hidden realms. The power of these sacred tools was so immense that they were kept in hidden chambers within the temples, away from the eyes of the uninitiated. Only those who were trained in the sacred arts could handle them, and their use was strictly controlled. But what made these objects even more powerful was the belief that they were tied to the very fabric of the universe, representing forces that were beyond human understanding. The high priests and priestesses who wielded them did so with the knowledge that they were not merely performing rituals. They were communicating directly with the cosmos. Each movement, each offering, each incantation was a means of harnessing the divine energy contained within these artifacts, shaping the destiny of individuals, kingdoms, and the world itself. As we examine these tools, we must consider the secret knowledge that allowed the priests to wield such power, knowledge that was passed down in hidden texts and symbols. What ancient teachings were embedded in these artifacts, and how were they used to manipulate both the mortal and divine worlds? Could these sacred relics still hold secrets, waiting to be uncovered, that might unlock the mysteries of ancient power? The answers may lie hidden within these objects, waiting for the right person to unlock their true potential. Could it be that the most powerful knowledge of ancient civilizations has been deliberately hidden for centuries? What if the key to understanding the ancient world lies within these lost teachings? Throughout history, high priests were not merely religious figures. They were the keepers of sacred knowledge, guardians of divine wisdom that was carefully protected and passed down only to a select few. This knowledge was not for the masses. It was esoteric, hidden from public view, and often concealed within sacred texts, oral traditions, and hidden chambers deep inside the temples. These high priests held the keys to understanding the cosmos, life after death, and the very nature of existence itself. The concept of esoteric knowledge is central to many ancient cultures, particularly those that had highly structured spiritual hierarchies. In ancient Egypt, for example, the high priests were seen as the intermediaries between the gods and humanity. They were thought to possess secret knowledge about the universe and the afterlife, passed down through generations of priesthood. This wisdom was not only about the gods and rituals, it also included profound teachings about the nature of the soul, the cosmos, and the cycle of life and death. The Egyptians believed in an intricate understanding of the universe, where everything from the movement of the stars to the rituals performed in the temples was tied to a deeper cosmic order. The high priests were responsible for maintaining this order and ensuring that humanity remained in alignment with the divine. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, for instance, contained more than just instructions for navigating the afterlife. It was a repository of esoteric knowledge, full of secret teachings about the soul's journey and its connection to the gods. These teachings were meant for the pharaohs and the most elite members of society, offering them guidance on how to transcend the mortal realm and join the gods in eternity. The high priests, entrusted with interpreting these texts, were believed to possess the ability to communicate directly with the gods and spirits of the dead. Their rituals were seen as powerful tools for unlocking the mysteries of life, death, and the afterlife, mysteries that were only accessible to those initiated into the priesthood. Similarly, in ancient Greece, the high priests at the Temple of Delphi were regarded as the keepers of divine knowledge, particularly in the form of prophecy. The Oracle of Delphi, under the guidance of the high priestess Pythia, was said to channel the will of the god Apollo, revealing hidden truths about the future. But the knowledge that Pythia accessed was not just about predicting events, it was about understanding the hidden forces that govern the world. The priesthood at Delphi used astrology, sacred geometry, and sacred symbols to interpret the divine messages that came through the oracle. These teachings, passed down through the generations, were considered to be deeply esoteric, meant for only the most spiritually advanced. Astrology played a key role in these secret teachings. The high priests were thought to understand the influence of celestial bodies on human affairs, interpreting the positions of the stars and planets to gain insight into the divine plan. Astrology, in this context, was not just a form of divination, it was a sophisticated science that tied human existence to the movements of the cosmos. This ancient understanding of astrology, combined with sacred geometry and other esoteric practices, allowed the priests to unlock hidden knowledge about the universe and its underlying order. In Mesopotamia, the high priests had access to similar esoteric knowledge. Babylonian astrology, for example, was not simply a tool for predicting the future. It was a means of understanding the divine forces at work in the world. The Babylonians believed that the gods communicated their will through celestial events, and the high priests were trained to interpret these omens. They used astrology to determine the best times for battles, agricultural planting, and even royal decisions. The priesthood in ancient Mesopotamia was considered the custodian of this knowledge, using it to guide the rulers and the people. They held the keys to understanding the divine will, which was thought to be revealed through the stars. But the secret knowledge of the priests was not limited to astrology and the afterlife. In many cultures, alchemy played a significant role in the spiritual practices of the priesthood. Alchemy was not merely an early form of chemistry, it was a mystical science that sought to transform the soul and the material world. The high priests of ancient civilizations, such as those in Egypt and Mesopotamia, were believed to have used alchemical knowledge to perform sacred rituals that could alter reality itself. Alchemy was seen as a means of purifying the soul, transmuting base metals into gold, and even achieving immortality. This secret knowledge was kept closely guarded, passed down only to those who had proven their worthiness through years of training and spiritual practice. The esoteric knowledge held by these high priests was seen as both a privilege and a responsibility. It allowed them to perform powerful rituals that could influence the course of history, shape the fate of nations, and guide individuals on their spiritual journeys. But this knowledge also came with great danger. The high priests were the only ones who could wield this power, and they were entrusted with the delicate task of balancing the forces of the divine and the mortal realms. Any misuse of this knowledge could lead to catastrophic consequences, not just for the priesthood, but for the entire society. Now that we've uncovered the knowledge that allowed high priests to wield such influence, let's explore the secrets of their influence on the world outside the temple walls. How did these powerful spiritual leaders use their divine understanding to shape the fate of their communities? And what impact did their secret knowledge have on the broader civilizations they served? The answers lie in the ways these priests exercised their power, both within the sacred walls of the temple and beyond. What if the high priests of the temples were not just spiritual leaders, but the true rulers of the ancient world? What if the fate of empires rested in their hands? Throughout history, the high priests of ancient temples wielded immense power, far beyond the spiritual realm. They were not only the keepers of divine knowledge and guardians of sacred rituals, but also the influential political figures who shaped the course of entire civilizations. From advising kings to controlling vast amounts of wealth, high priests held the reins of power, and their decisions often determined the fate of nations. In Egypt, for example, the high priest of Amun was one of the most powerful men in the kingdom, second only to the pharaoh himself. The priests of Amun controlled vast estates, an enormous portion of Egypt's wealth, and a network of temples that stretched throughout the land. They acted as both spiritual and political advisors to the pharaohs, guiding decisions that affected everything from military campaigns to diplomatic relations. The power of the high priests extended beyond the temples. They were the ones who could determine the fate of the kingdom. If a priest declared an omen or made a ritual offering to appease the gods, the king was expected to act on it, often without question. The priests were believed to possess the divine wisdom to interpret the will of the gods, making them indispensable to the rulers of Egypt. Without their blessings, the pharaohs could not maintain their divine right to rule, and the kingdom would risk falling into chaos. Similarly, in ancient Mesopotamia, the high priests played a central role in the governance of the city. States they were not only spiritual leaders, but also political figures who influenced the laws and decisions of kings. The Babylonians, for instance, believed that the gods communicated directly through their priests, guiding rulers on matters of state. When King Nebuchadnezzar II sought to expand his empire, he consulted the high priests, who interpreted celestial omens to determine the best times for battle and conquest. The priests also controlled important religious and cultural institutions, shaping the moral and social fabric of society. Their interpretations of divine will influence the legal codes, the administration of justice, and even the daily lives of the people. In ancient Greece, the high priests were similarly integrated into the political structure, especially in places like Delphi, where the oracle of Apollo held immense sway. Kings, generals, and commoners alike sought the counsel of the oracle before making any major decision, from launching military campaigns to deciding on political alliances. The high priestesses at Delphi were believed to channel the will of the gods through divine prophecy, and their words could shift the course of history. The influence of the priests extended beyond the temple. They were deeply embedded in the political and social order, holding power over matters of life, death, and the very destiny of the Greek city-states. In each of these ancient societies, high priests were far more than mere religious figures. They were the guardians of divine wisdom, and their ability to interpret the will of the gods made them central to the functioning of society. Whether advising kings, controlling wealth, or dictating laws, these high priests held the ultimate power in shaping the fate of their civilizations. With the influence of high priests and their role in society firmly established, let's now look at the profound impact these ancient temples had on the people who visited them. How did these sacred spaces shape the lives of those who entered? And what role did the rituals and teachings of the high priests play in their everyday existence? The answers lie in the ways the temples influenced the hearts and minds of the people, guiding their moral compass and shaping their worldview. What if visiting these temples wasn't just a religious act, but a way to tap into untold divine power? Could the temples themselves be the key to unlocking personal transformations? For the ancient people who journeyed to these sacred spaces, temples were much more than physical structures. They were seen as gateways to the divine, places where the earthly and celestial realms intersected. People from all walks of life traveled great distances, hoping to receive guidance, blessings, or even healing. Whether they sought the favor of the gods, a vision of the future, or relief from suffering, they believed that by entering these sacred spaces, they could access divine power that would transform their lives. Temples were not just places where people gathered to worship. They were designed to be immersive spiritual experiences, crafted to maximize the connection between the mortal and divine worlds. The architecture, the sounds, the visuals, all played a crucial role in creating an atmosphere that heightened the sense of divine presence. Ancient cultures understood the power of the senses in shaping human experience, and temples were constructed to engage these senses in a way that would elevate the soul. In ancient Egypt, for example, temples dedicated to gods like Ammon, Ra, and Osiris were designed with incredible attention to detail, incorporating elements that created a profound spiritual experience. The acoustics of the temple were carefully planned, using the natural resonance of stone to amplify the sounds of prayers, chants, and the ringing of bells. When visitors entered the temple, they would be enveloped by the sounds of sacred hymns, which were believed to carry the divine energy of the gods. These sounds resonated throughout the space, imbuing the temple with a palpable spiritual atmosphere that would make the visitor feel as though they were standing in the presence of the divine. The visual elements of the temple were equally important. The walls were often adorned with intricate carvings and frescoes depicting gods, goddesses, and divine events. The art was not merely decorative, it was a visual representation of the divine order, a way to bring the gods closer to the people. The placement of statues, often positioned at the temple's heart, was also significant. These statues were thought to be imbued with divine power, and by approaching them, visitors could experience the physical manifestation of the god's presence. The design of the temples also took into account the flow of light, especially during key moments of the year, such as solstices or eclipses, when the sunlight would illuminate specific parts of the temple, creating a moment of divine revelation for those who were there to witness it. Similarly, in ancient Greece, temples like the Parthenon were constructed with the same intention, to create a space where mortals could commune with the gods. The grand columns and symmetrical design of the Parthenon were meant to reflect the beauty and order of the divine, reinforcing the belief that the gods themselves were present in these sacred spaces. The acoustics of Greek temples were designed to carry the sound of the priests' prayers and hymns throughout the structure, creating a sense of connection to the divine. The people who visited these temples believed that by stepping into these spaces, they could momentarily transcend the mundane world and experience something greater than themselves. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats, or stepped pyramids, were not only architectural feats, but symbolic representations of the connection between heaven and earth. People who ascended these massive structures believed they were literally climbing closer to the gods. At the top of the ziggurat, priests would perform rituals, and it was thought that by being present in this sacred space, visitors could receive divine favor. The ziggurats were more than just places of worship. They were powerful conduits of spiritual energy, designed to bring the divine down to earth. Temples in India, dedicated to gods like Shiva, Vishnu, and Durga, were also built with a similar understanding of the transformative power of sacred spaces. The vast, intricate temples were often aligned with cosmic cycles, such as the movement of the stars and the phases of the moon. The rituals performed within these temples were designed to align the participants with the rhythms of the universe, bringing them closer to the divine and ensuring that the forces of nature were in balance. The visual grandeur of these temples, with their towering spires and richly decorated interiors, was meant to evoke awe and reverence, amplifying the connection between the mortal and divine worlds. In each of these cultures, the belief in the power of the temple was not abstract, it was deeply felt. Temples were seen as portals, where the divine was not something distant or intangible, but something that could be encountered, felt, and experienced in the very fabric of the temple itself. By entering these sacred spaces, individuals believed they could tap into a higher spiritual energy, receive divine messages, and experience personal transformation. Let's now examine how the belief in the power of these temples influenced the rituals and ceremonies that took place within their walls, especially during the night. What made these sacred spaces so powerful during the darkness? And how did rituals performed in the dead of night further deepen the sense of connection between the human soul and the divine? The answer lies in the way ancient cultures harnessed the transformative potential of these sacred spaces, and how the rituals performed within them created moments of divine revelation and spiritual awakening. What if these ancient temples were not just places of prayer, but centers of miraculous healing and prophecy? Could the powers of the divine truly change the fate of the people who entered throughout the ancient world? Temples were not merely spiritual centers, they were places where miraculous events were believed to take place. These sacred spaces were often associated with healing powers, both physical and spiritual, and the ability to predict the future. The high priests and priestesses who tended to the rituals were thought to channel divine knowledge, granting the sick relief, guiding the lost, and offering prophecies about the future. For many, visiting these temples wasn't just an act of devotion, it was an opportunity to receive a miracle. In ancient Greece, the Oracle of Delphi was perhaps the most famous example of a temple believed to hold divine powers of prophecy. Pilgrims traveled from all over the ancient world to seek the wisdom of the Pythia, the high priestess who served as the mouthpiece of Apollo. The temple was constructed over a fissure in the earth, where vapors were thought to rise, inducing a trance-like state in the Pythia. In this altered state of consciousness, she would deliver prophecies, often in cryptic language, which were then interpreted by the priests. Kings, warriors, and commoners alike sought the oracle's guidance on matters of war, governance, and personal decisions. The most famous example of this divine guidance was when King Croesus of Lydia consulted the oracle before embarking on a war against Persia. The oracle's prophecy, though ambiguous, was believed to have predicted the downfall of Croesus, which ultimately came to pass. The Temple of Apollo at Delphi was not just a center for religious worship. It was a place where the gods were believed to intervene directly in the affairs of men, altering the course of history. In ancient Egypt, temples were also seen as centers of healing, with priests and priestesses performing rituals that were believed to cure both physical ailments and spiritual afflictions. The Egyptians had a deep understanding of medicine, but they also believed that illness could be caused by spiritual imbalance, curses, or angering the gods. Temples dedicated to gods like Hathor and Sekhmet were often centers for healing, where people would come seeking relief from ailments. In some cases, visitors would undergo purification rituals, involving sacred baths, prayers, and offerings to the gods. In other instances, they would seek out the priests for specific cures. One famous example is the healing cult of Imhotep, an ancient Egyptian priest who was revered as a god of medicine. His temple in Memphis became a destination for those seeking miraculous healing, with pilgrims hoping that Imhotep's divine influence would cure their afflictions. The temple was seen as a sacred space where the physical and spiritual realms converged, and healing was believed to be a divine gift, granted through the intervention of the gods. In Mesopotamia, the temples were also associated with both prophecy and healing. The Babylonians and Assyrians had elaborate systems of divination, using methods like reading omens, interpreting dreams, and studying celestial events to predict the future. In addition to this, the temples often served as places where individuals could seek cures for physical and mental ailments. The priests were not only spiritual leaders, they were also skilled in the use of herbs, potions, and rituals designed to heal the body. One of the most famous healing temples was dedicated to the god Ea, the god of wisdom and healing. The temple was believed to possess the power to cure diseases and to protect individuals from harmful spirits. The priests at these temples were seen as conduits of divine power, capable of invoking the gods to heal the sick and guide the lost. These temples were more than just places for ritual prayer. They were believed to be literal gateways to the divine, capable of bringing about miraculous changes. Visitors who came seeking healing or divine guidance often believed that the sacred space itself held an energy that could alter their fate. The atmosphere within these temples, the incense, the chants, the prayers, was carefully designed to create a sacred environment where the veil between the mortal and divine worlds was thinnest. It was in this charged atmosphere that miracles were believed to happen, whether it was healing the sick, offering prophecies, or even granting visions of the afterlife. These temples were seen as places where divine power could manifest in the physical world. As we delve into these miraculous occurrences, we must ask, were these healings and prophecies real? Or were they the result of elaborate rituals and carefully cultivated beliefs? Did the high priests and priestesses possess true supernatural powers, or was the power of belief itself enough to bring about these miraculous events? The answer may lie in the intersection of ritual, divine faith, and the human mind, where the line between the spiritual and the material world is blurred, and the divine is experienced as something tangible and transformative. What if the transformation of ancient temples into religious institutions was part of a deliberate effort to control the spiritual experiences of the people? Could this shift have hidden the most powerful truths from the masses? The evolution of temple belief systems is a fascinating journey that reveals the delicate balance between spirituality and power. Initially, ancient temples were seen as direct channels to the divine, spaces where individuals could personally connect with gods, spirits, and cosmic forces. However, as civilizations progressed, these sacred spaces began to evolve into more structured institutions, and the personal mystical experiences once sought by temple goers started to give way to organized systems of faith. This shift marked the beginning of what we now recognize as formal religions, where spiritual experiences were regulated, institutionalized, and often controlled by a select few. In the earlier stages of temple worship, individuals sought a direct and personal connection with the divine. The temples were considered gateways where mortals could access the gods through rituals, sacrifices, and prayers. These sacred spaces were deeply intertwined with mystical beliefs, and the idea of divine interaction was intimate and personal. The high priests, often regarded as mediators between the gods and the people, would perform rituals that were believed to bring about immediate divine responses, whether it was a prophecy, healing, or blessing. There was a sense of the temple being an open space where the divine could be accessed by any faithful soul, regardless of status or wealth. In ancient Egypt, for example, the Temple of Karnak, dedicated to Ammon, served as a space where the pharaoh and his people could directly connect with the gods. While the pharaohs were viewed as divine beings, the common people could still visit the temple and participate in rituals that allowed them to invoke the gods. The temple wasn't just a monument, it was a living entity where divine power was felt in every moment. The connection between the sacred and the everyday was fluid, as the boundaries between the mortal and divine realms felt much less defined than they would become in later eras. As civilizations advanced, particularly during the rise of empires, like those in Greece, Rome, and Mesopotamia, the role of temples began to shift. While the idea of connecting with the gods remained central, temples began to take on more political significance. Rulers saw the opportunity to consolidate power by controlling access to the divine, and as the concept of the divine right of kings took root, temples became the center of both spiritual and political life. The gods were no longer just approachable forces for anyone seeking divine favor. They became part of a larger, organized system where only the elite, the kings, the high priests, and the select few had access to the divine power of the temples. The personal, mystical connection with the gods that early temple goers experienced was increasingly replaced by a more formalized system, where rituals were prescribed, and divine communication was mediated by a religious hierarchy. In ancient Greece, this transition can be seen in the transformation of oracles from personal, mystical experiences to more structured systems of prophecy. The Oracle of Delphi, which initially offered visions and messages that were believed to be spontaneous and divine, eventually became an institution where prophecies were carefully interpreted and controlled by the high priests. The oracle, once a space of direct divine interaction, became a part of the political machinery of the state, advising kings and generals on matters of war, diplomacy, and governance. The people no longer sought prophecy for personal enlightenment, they sought it to guide their leaders and nations, and this shift in purpose marked the beginning of the institutionalization of spiritual power. In the Roman Empire, the religious practices that centered around temples became fully institutionalized, with emperors assuming roles as high priests and overseeing vast religious structures. Temples were no longer just sacred spaces, they became symbols of political and imperial power. The introduction of state-sponsored religion, particularly the worship of emperors as divine beings, further cemented the idea that temples were spaces controlled by the elite, where access to the gods was mediated through religious authority rather than personal connection. The notion of personal divine interaction faded as more dogmatic belief systems took hold, with the people being expected to follow prescribed rituals and beliefs rather than seeking their own spiritual revelations. This process of institutionalization was not limited to the Mediterranean world. In Mesopotamia, the priesthoods became highly organized, with temples dedicated not just to the gods, but also to the political and social order of the state. Priests were trained not only in spiritual practices but in the management of wealth, land, and resources. They acted as advisors to kings and were heavily involved in political decisions. Over time, the personal, mystical experiences that the early Mesopotamian people sought in the temples were replaced with rituals and ceremonies that were more focused on maintaining the divine order as dictated by the temple authorities. The shift from personal divine interaction to institutionalized religion marked a turning point in the history of temple belief systems. Temples went from being mystical gateways where anyone could seek divine favor to formalized institutions where access to the divine was controlled and regulated. This transformation laid the groundwork for the organized religions that would come to dominate the world, such as Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, where temples and places of worship became institutions of law, governance, and ritual rather than personal spiritual sanctuaries. Now that we've explored the evolution of temple belief systems, let's turn our attention to the modern implications of these ancient practices. What remnants of the temple's power and mystique remain in today's world? Could the ancient traditions of spiritual awakening and personal divine interaction still be accessible, or have they been replaced entirely by organized systems of belief? The answers may lie in the way we experience the sacred today, and how the ancient reverence for temples continues to shape our understanding of the divine. What if the world's most powerful spiritual sites full of divine knowledge and rituals were erased forever. What secrets did we lose when these temples fell? The decline of the ancient temples is one of the great tragedies of history. These once mighty centers of spiritual, political, and cultural influence, revered for their divine power and the sacred knowledge they held, were gradually abandoned, looted, or repurposed. The causes of their fall were multifaceted, shaped by the rise of new religions, shifting political landscapes, and the invasions of foreign conquerors who sought to dismantle these pillars of ancient society. With the destruction of these temples came the erasure of the ancient spiritual practices and the loss of the profound wisdom that had once been contained within their walls. The fall of the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus is one of the most iconic examples of the destruction of a sacred space. Once considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Artemis was a massive and magnificent structure dedicated to the goddess Artemis. It was a hub for pilgrims from across the ancient world, a place where people sought divine favor and connected with the goddess. However, the temple's downfall came as a result of both natural disasters and human conflict. In 356 BCE, the temple was destroyed by arson, allegedly by Herostratus, a man seeking fame at any cost. Although it was rebuilt, the temple would eventually fall again due to the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire and the eventual Roman conquest of the region. The once sacred space was gradually abandoned, with its riches looted and its significance diminished, leaving behind only the ruins that we can visit today. The knowledge of the rituals, the sacred practices, and the spiritual energy that once flowed through the temple has largely been lost to time. The decline of Egypt's temples under Roman rule offers another tragic example of the erosion of ancient spiritual practices. Egypt, once home to some of the world's most powerful and influential temples, saw the gradual decline of its religious centers as Rome asserted its dominance over the region. The temples of Isis, Osiris, and Ammon, once the beating hearts of Egypt's spiritual life, became mere shadows of their former selves. The Romans, who had their own pantheon of gods, sought to integrate Egyptian deities into their system of beliefs, often reinterpreting and diminishing their original significance. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, many of Egypt's temples were repurposed for Christian worship or abandoned entirely. The rich spiritual traditions that once flourished in these sacred spaces were replaced with the dogma of a new faith, and the ancient knowledge that had been carefully preserved by the high priests was lost or destroyed. The destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem is another stark example of the collapse of a once great spiritual center. The original temple, built by King Solomon, was a central place of worship for the Israelites, home to the Ark of the Covenant and a site of divine encounters. However, the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, marking the beginning of a long period of exile for the Jewish people. Although the temple was rebuilt in the 6th century BCE, it was ultimately destroyed again by the Romans in 70 CE. The fall of the temple not only marked the physical destruction of a sacred space, but also led to the dispersal of the Jewish people and the dissolution of many of their ancient religious practices. The loss of the temple was deeply traumatic, and with it, much of the knowledge and rituals associated with it were lost to history. As these temples fell, they did not simply become ruins, they became symbols of the decline of ancient spiritual traditions and the fading of direct divine connection. The temples were not just places of worship, they were repositories of knowledge about the gods, the cosmos, the afterlife, and the very nature of existence. When the temples were destroyed, much of this sacred knowledge was either lost, suppressed, or hidden away. Sacred texts were burned or sealed away, and the rituals performed by the high priests and priestesses, which had once been considered the highest form of divine communication, were abandoned or replaced by new practices that were more rigid, formalized, and institutionalized. The fall of the ancient temples also marked the end of an era where the divine could be directly accessed by the individual. As these temples declined and new religious institutions rose in their place, the personal mystical experiences that once defined temple worship became less accessible. The knowledge and power that had once been embodied in the temples and their priests became concentrated in the hands of religious institutions, which often sought to control access to the divine and restrict the flow of spiritual power. The mysteries that had once been available to those who sought them were replaced by dogmatic systems of belief, and the sacred spaces that had once been alive with spiritual energy became mere relics of the past. While many temples were lost to time, some remnants remain, fragments of their former glory, standing as silent witnesses to the knowledge and power that once resided within them. These ruins, though stripped of their former vitality, still carry an aura of mystery, inviting us to ponder what secrets may be hidden beneath the surface. What if these ruins hold the keys to understanding the lost knowledge of the ancients? The temples, though reduced to stones and broken columns, continue to hold a magnetic pull for those who seek to uncover the truths that may have been lost when these great spiritual centers fell. Now that we've explored the fall of these temples, let's examine what remnants remain and how they continue to influence our understanding of the ancient world. What secrets do these ruins still whisper, and how can they illuminate our knowledge of the divine power that once flowed through them? The answer may lie in the stones that remain, waiting to be uncovered and understood by those who dare to listen. What if the greatest secrets of the ancient world were not lost by chance, but erased on purpose? What truths have been deliberately hidden from us for centuries? As the ancient temples fell and their power was stripped away, so too were the sacred texts, manuscripts and artifacts that once held the profound knowledge of divine rituals, cosmic understanding, and spiritual practices. This was not merely the result of neglect or natural decay. In many cases, the destruction of this knowledge was a deliberate act intended to suppress the secrets that were contained within these sacred spaces. These actions were part of a broader effort to consolidate power and control over the masses, ensuring that certain truths about the cosmos, the gods, and human existence remained hidden from public view. The destruction of ancient temples and the knowledge they held was not a random occurrence, but a systematic process aimed at erasing the spiritual practices and divine wisdom that had once flourished in these spaces. One of the most famous examples of this deliberate suppression of knowledge was the burning of the Library of Alexandria, one of the largest and most important libraries of the ancient world. The library contained countless texts, many of which were invaluable records of ancient wisdom, including sacred writings, astronomical knowledge, medical texts, and philosophical works. These works, some of which had been passed down from earlier civilizations, such as Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece, were considered to be the foundation of all knowledge. The library's destruction, often attributed to a series of fires, some accidental, some deliberately set, marked a devastating loss to humanity. But the loss of the Library of Alexandria was not just the result of negligence or war. It was part of a larger pattern of cultural and religious upheaval. The rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire and the later spread of Islam contributed to the erasure of ancient spiritual knowledge. In the early centuries of the Common Era, the Christianization of the Roman Empire led to the destruction of many pagan temples, along with the libraries and manuscripts they contained. Pagan gods, rituals, and the esoteric knowledge of the ancient world were systematically replaced by the Christian faith, which sought to consolidate spiritual power under a single, unified doctrine. In many cases, Christian leaders actively sought to erase the old ways in order to promote the new faith. Temples were repurposed or demolished, and sacred texts were destroyed or hidden. The knowledge contained within these texts, often related to the worship of multiple gods, astrology, and the mysteries of the cosmos, was seen as heretical by the growing Christian establishment. As a result, much of the ancient wisdom, particularly that which related to the spiritual and cosmic mysteries, was lost or deliberately suppressed. Similarly, as Islam spread across the Middle East and North Africa, ancient temples and their associated knowledge were often destroyed or hidden away. The early Islamic conquests, while focused on spreading the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, also led to the destruction of many cultural and spiritual centers. Ancient temples, libraries, and places of worship that had once housed sacred texts and spiritual knowledge were abandoned or repurposed, and the wisdom they contained was either lost or suppressed. Like the Christian conquests, the rise of Islam represented a shift in the spiritual and intellectual landscape, one that often sought to consolidate religious and political power by erasing older belief systems and their associated knowledge. The deliberate suppression of knowledge was not limited to the destruction of temples and libraries. Many sacred texts and manuscripts were hidden away either by the conquerors or by the surviving priesthoods, in order to protect them from destruction. Some of this knowledge survived in secret, passed down through oral traditions or hidden in remote locations, but much was lost to history. The idea that these ancient teachings were deliberately hidden in order to maintain control over the people is a powerful narrative that suggests that the powers of the past understood the profound impact that knowledge could have on the masses. The ancient spiritual practices and cosmic knowledge that were once accessible to all were now concealed, not out of ignorance, but as a means of maintaining power and keeping the populace in a state of spiritual subjugation. This systematic erasure of knowledge raises a compelling question. What secrets did the ancient world hold that were considered too dangerous for the masses to know? What truths about the divine, the cosmos, and the nature of reality were hidden away to prevent widespread access? Some believe that the knowledge erased by conquerors and religious reformers contained insights that could revolutionize our understanding of the universe and our place within it. Whether it was the hidden wisdom of the ancient Egyptians, the cosmic knowledge of the Mesopotamians, or the spiritual practices of the Greeks and Romans, the loss of this knowledge marked a turning point in human history, one that continues to affect us today. Though much was lost, some ancient wisdom survived. Let's look at the fragments that remain and the secrets they still contain. These remnants of the ancient world, whether in the form of hidden texts, artifacts, or oral traditions, continue to offer us glimpses into the knowledge that was once available to the masses. What if these surviving pieces hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of the ancient world and the divine power that was once accessible to all? The answers may lie in the fragments that remain, waiting for us to rediscover the wisdom that was lost to time. Could these surviving fragments, ancient texts, inscriptions, and artifacts, hold the key to uncovering the lost knowledge of the temples? What truths might we still recover from the fragments of the past? Throughout history, much of the profound wisdom housed within the ancient temples has been lost or deliberately erased, but some remnants of that knowledge have endured, defying centuries of destruction, neglect, and suppression. These surviving pieces of history offer us a window into the world of the ancient spiritual practices, the cosmic knowledge, and the mysteries that once defined these sacred spaces. From inscriptions on stone to hidden manuscripts, these artifacts continue to captivate modern scholars and spiritual seekers alike, holding the potential to unlock forgotten truths about the divine and the universe. One of the most famous examples of surviving ancient knowledge is the Dead Sea Scrolls T, discovered in the caves of Qumran in the 1940s and 1950s. These ancient manuscripts, dating from the 2nd century BCE to the 1st century CE, contain a wealth of information about Jewish history, scripture, and early Christian writings. The scrolls, which include biblical texts, apocryphal works, and sectarian writings, were hidden away by the Essene community, possibly to protect them from Roman destruction. The Dead Sea Scrolls offer insight not only into the religious practices of the time, but also into the esoteric knowledge that was being guarded. While many of these texts are concerned with ritual purity and divine law, others hint at the mystical and spiritual practices of ancient Judaism. Some scholars believe that the scrolls may hold deeper, hidden teachings, secrets that were deliberately suppressed by mainstream religious institutions. By studying these texts, modern scholars continue to uncover forgotten aspects of the ancient world that challenge our understanding of early religious beliefs and practices. Another iconic artifact that has provided crucial insight into the ancient world is the AD Sivandai Rosetta Stone, discovered in 1799 during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. This stone contains a decree issued in 1996 BCE by the Egyptian king Ptolemy V. The inscription is written in 3 scripts: Greek, Egyptian hieroglyphics, and Egyptian Demotic. The Rosetta Stone was instrumental in deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, a writing system that had been lost to history for over 1,000 years. By comparing the Greek text, which was already known, with the hieroglyphic and Demotic scripts, scholars were able to unlock the mysteries of ancient Egyptian language and culture. This discovery opened the door to a wealth of knowledge about Egypt's temples, rituals, and spiritual practices. It allowed scholars to understand the profound role that language played in the ancient world's spiritual practices. where the power of words and symbols was often seen as a way to communicate directly with the gods. The Sphinx, another enduring symbol of ancient Egypt, continues to offer clues about the spiritual practices and cosmic knowledge of the Egyptians. While much about the Sphinx remains shrouded in mystery, such as the exact date of its construction and its symbolic significance, it is widely believed that it was not just a monument, but a sacred object that held spiritual power. The Sphinx's alignment with the stars, particularly with the constellation Leo, suggests that the ancient Egyptians used it as a symbol of divine authority and cosmic order. It is thought that the Sphinx, like many other ancient structures, was carefully aligned with celestial bodies, reinforcing the idea that the temples and monuments of Egypt were designed to connect the earthly realm with the divine. The Sphinx, with its enigmatic gaze and silent presence, remains a reminder of the ancient wisdom that is still waiting to be fully understood. In addition to these famous discoveries, many smaller, less well-known artifacts have surfaced over the years, shedding light on the spiritual practices of ancient peoples. Cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia, for instance, contain detailed records of divination practices, rituals, and the interpretation of celestial omens. These tablets reveal how the high priests of ancient Mesopotamia used astrology and celestial events to guide the fate of their city, states. Similarly, Maya codices, though few have survived, provide insight into the complex spiritual and astronomical knowledge of the Maya civilization. These codices, often written on bark paper, detail the Maya's understanding of the stars, planets, and the cycles of time, highlighting their belief in the interconnectedness of the divine and the natural world. Each of these surviving fragments, whether texts, inscriptions, or artifacts, provides a tantalizing glimpse into the world of the ancient temples and the knowledge they held. While much of the ancient wisdom has been lost, these remnants offer clues about the spiritual practices, rituals, and cosmic understanding that once thrived in these sacred spaces. The knowledge contained in these artifacts is not just historical, it is deeply spiritual, and by studying them, we can begin to unravel the mysteries that have remained hidden for centuries. The significance of these surviving fragments goes beyond mere historical curiosity. They hold the potential to reveal profound truths about the nature of the universe, the divine, and humanity's place within it. The rituals, teachings, and sacred practices that were once central to the temples may still be accessible to us, but only if we approach these artifacts with the understanding that they contain more than just ancient knowledge. They contain keys to unlocking a deeper spiritual connection to the divine. As we uncover the surviving remnants of the ancient world, we must also question whether any of the ancient spiritual power still remains today. What influence do these fragments of wisdom hold, and how can we use them to gain a greater understanding of our own connection to the divine? The fragments that have survived may hold more than just historical value. They may offer us a pathway to rediscovering the spiritual practices that once connected humanity to the gods. What if the temples of the ancient world never truly disappeared? What if their influence is still shaping the world we live in today, hidden beneath the surface? Though many of the grand and awe-inspiring temples of the ancient world have crumbled or been destroyed, their legacy continues to resonate in the spiritual and architectural structures of the modern world. The ancient practices, rituals, and principles that once defined these sacred spaces have been absorbed into the fabric of modern religions and religious buildings. Today, churches, mosques, synagogues, and other places of worship still reflect elements of the sacred designs that originated in these ancient temples, designs that were crafted to connect the earthly and divine realms. The principles of Thaindine sacred geometry, the belief that specific mathematical proportions and shapes can channel divine energy, are still evident in the architecture of religious buildings today. Take, for example, the Thuvi Gothic cathedrals of medieval Europe. These grand structures were designed with careful attention to proportions, light, and space, in ways that mirror the geometric precision of ancient temples. The soaring spires of these cathedrals and the intricate stained glass windows, which allow light to filter into the sacred space, reflect the same principles that were found in ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Mesopotamian temples. These designs were meant to evoke a sense of awe, reminding visitors of the divine presence that filled the space. Just as the ancient Egyptians used the alignment of their temples to reflect the cosmos, the architects of these medieval cathedrals used light and geometry to create a sense of the eternal. The influence of this celestial alignment can also be seen in the layout of modern religious buildings. Many temples and churches were and are still oriented towards specific celestial bodies or phenomena. For example, many Christian churches are traditionally oriented to the east, symbolizing the rising sun and the resurrection of Christ. This aligns with ancient practices, such as the alignment of Egyptian temples with the solstices and the positioning of the Parthenon in Greece to capture specific celestial moments. Similarly, many mosques are oriented towards Sivai Mecca, in alignment with the most significant celestial and spiritual center of the Islamic world. These alignments, passed down from the ancient world, demonstrate the continued importance of connecting human architecture with the cosmos. Even in the practice of fiddah rituals, from prayers to blessings, the legacy of ancient temple practices is evident. The idea of rituals performed at specific times, during specific phases of the moon, or in alignment with the changing seasons, still carries through to modern religious observances. Many of these practices were handed down from ancient spiritual systems, where the timing of offerings, prayers, and festivals was believed to align humanity with the rhythms of the divine. As we reflect on the legacy of these ancient temples, it's clear that their influence is far from gone. While the physical structures may have disappeared, the principles of sacred space, divine alignment, and cosmic understanding continue to shape our modern spiritual practices and religious architectures. But this raises an intriguing question: could there be a hidden truth beneath the surface of modern religions that links us back to the mysteries of the ancients? The ancient world's spiritual practices may have been transformed over time, but their core principles continue to guide us in ways we may not fully understand. As we seek to uncover these connections, we may discover that the legacy of the temples is still very much alive today, influencing how we worship, how we build, and how we experience the divine. What if the ancient temples still hold a power that modern science has yet to explain? Could these sacred sites still hold the key to unlocking hidden human potential? Across the world, ancient temples, pyramids, and other sacred sites continue to captivate the human imagination. From the pyramids of Egypt to the ruins of Machu Picchu and Stonehenge, these locations are not just historical remnants, they are powerful symbols of mystery, energy, and spiritual connection. Modern-day seekers, spiritual practitioners, and even tourists are drawn to these ancient spaces, believing that they still hold secrets and energies that have the potential to influence and transform the present day. But what is it about these sites that continues to attract so much attention? Do they truly contain hidden powers, or is it their rich history and symbolism that fuels their modern-day mystique? The belief that sacred sites continue to emanate powerful energies is deeply rooted in New Age spirituality and alternative healing practices. Many people visit these ancient places with the intention of tapping into their mysterious force, whether it is the alignment of the Foyne pyramids of Giza, the energy fields around Stonehenge, or the mystical aura of Machu Picchu. These places are thought to possess an energy that can heal, enlighten, or unlock hidden human potential. For example, visitors to the Egyptian pyramids often report a sense of awe and spiritual elevation when they stand near the great structures, with some even claiming to experience physical sensations, such as increased energy or a heightened sense of awareness. In fact, modern spiritual practitioners believe that certain areas within these temples and monuments are energetically charged, with specific locations offering more potent spiritual benefits. Some modern rituals even take place in these ancient sacred spaces, continuing the legacy of the rituals once performed within the temple walls. For instance, in places like Stonehenge, modern-day ceremonies take place during the solstices and equinoxes, marking the passage of time and honoring the cycles of the earth and the cosmos. These ceremonies, which blend modern spirituality with ancient symbolism, aim to tap into the supposed mystical energy of the site. Participants gather, meditate, and perform rituals to connect with the earth, the stars, and the divine forces that are believed to have been honored there for centuries. Similarly, practitioners of alternative healing often visit these sites with the intention of receiving a spiritual boost, aligning their own energies with those of the sacred land. There are those who believe that these sites not only hold a connection to the divine, but also influence the physical and psychological well-being of those who visit, Some claim that the energy of these ancient temples can foster a sense of healing, balance, and personal growth. Practices like Figili Leinsind, the theory that invisible energy grids run along specific geographical locations, suggest that the alignment of sacred sites is no accident. According to this belief, ancient civilizations intentionally built temples and monuments in alignment with these energy lines, further amplifying their power and significance. Some modern spiritual seekers claim that by visiting these lines and sacred places, they can access a hidden spiritual knowledge that was once available only to those who were initiated into the ancient mysteries. The power of these ancient temples isn't just reserved for spiritual or healing practices. It also plays a role in modern-day exploration and research. Archaeologists and scientists have long been fascinated by the construction techniques, the celestial alignments, and the geographical locations of these temples. Many believe that the precision of these ancient constructions suggests that their builders possessed advanced knowledge, whether in the realms of astronomy, geometry, or energy manipulation, that has been lost to time. Even with modern technology, the true purpose and function of many ancient temples remain a mystery. This sense of mystery only adds to the allure and draws people from all over the world, hoping to uncover forgotten knowledge or experience something transcendent. For example, the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the last remaining wonders of the ancient world, continues to be a focal point of fascination. The precision with which it was constructed, its alignment with the stars, and the theories surrounding its purpose fuel the belief that the pyramid holds secrets far beyond simple architectural achievement. Some claim that the pyramid's design, intended to be a tomb for a pharaoh, also served as a spiritual beacon or a conduit for divine knowledge. Many modern spiritual seekers visit the site to meditate or perform rituals, hoping to absorb the energy of the pyramid and connect with the ancient knowledge it might still hold. In 15 Machu Picchu, the once sacred site of the Inca civilization, the energy of the mountains and the layout of the site continue to captivate visitors. The Inca people, known for their advanced knowledge of astronomy and geometry, aligned their temples with the movement of celestial bodies, creating a deep spiritual connection between the earth and the sky. Modern visitors to the site often report feeling a sense of connection with nature and the cosmos, believing that the energy of the ancient site still exists and can enhance their own spiritual awareness. Let's now take a deeper look at the connection between these ancient sacred spaces and the people who visit them today. Are they simply tourists, or is something more going on beneath the surface? Is it possible that the legacy of these ancient temples and the power they once held are still present, quietly influencing the lives of those who come into contact with them? The answer might lie in how the energy of these places is experienced and interpreted by modern-day seekers, blending the ancient and the contemporary in a way that allows the spiritual practices of the past to continue in new and transformative forms. What if modern-day spiritual seekers are tapping into the same hidden forces that once thrived in these ancient temples? Are these seekers truly unlocking the mysteries of the past, or are they being guided by something much older? In today's world, there exists a growing movement of temple seekers, individuals who travel the globe in search of spiritual experiences at ancient sacred sites. For these modern-day pilgrims, these temples and monuments are not merely remnants of a lost civilization. They are seen as powerful spaces where the divine still lingers, where the energy of ancient rituals continues to pulse, and where secrets of the cosmos can be uncovered. To them, these sites are not just historical landmarks, they are living, breathing places capable of unlocking personal enlightenment, healing, and even access to lost knowledge. Many of these temple seekers engage in spiritual practices like meditation, energy work, and channeling, believing that these ancient locations hold latent powers capable of transforming their lives. For example, in places like the 50 pyramids of Egypt, visitors often meditate inside the great structures, hoping to absorb the energy of the stones which they believe have been charged over millennia by the rituals of ancient priests. Some believe that by focusing their intentions and energies within these sacred spaces, they can tap into the wisdom of the past and align themselves with the divine forces that once thrived in these temples. These seekers sometimes claim to experience heightened awareness, vivid visions, or even an overwhelming sense of connection to the divine, further reinforcing the belief that these sacred spaces continue to exude a powerful energy that can be accessed by those who are attuned to it. At the Stonehenge, one of the most famous megalithic sites in the world, modern seekers gather during the solstices to perform rituals, believing that these celestial events are a time when the Earth's energy aligns with the cosmos. For many, the act of standing in the circle of stones during these pivotal moments is a way to connect with the ancient wisdom that once guided the builders of Stonehenge. Some claim that the site's alignment with the sun during specific times of the year is not simply a matter of astronomy, but a manifestation of the divine order, an energy that can still be accessed today by those who approach it with reverence. Similarly, in the Fivayandesi at Machu Picchu, modern spiritual seekers visit the Inca site, which was once a sacred city dedicated to the worship of the sun. Today, many visitors engage in rituals that reflect the spiritual practices of the ancient Incas. Some perform ceremonies to honor Pachamama, the earth goddess, while others meditate in the sacred spaces, hoping to connect with the ancient energy believed to still inhabit the site. The Inca had an intimate relationship with the land, and many believe that this connection has left an energetic imprint on the location, one that can still be felt by those who visit with the right intentions. Through energy work and spiritual practices, seekers aim to tap into this energy, unlocking a deeper understanding of themselves and the universe. The popularity of these ancient sites among modern spiritual seekers has also led to the rise of psychic practices associated with these locations. Some visitors to the temples claim to have psychic experiences, such as receiving intuitive messages, hearing voices from the past, or even seeing apparitions of ancient priests. These practices range from energy healing to attempts to engage with the spiritual entities believed to still inhabit these sacred spaces. This growing trend has even led to the rise of spiritual tourism, where people visit these ancient sites not just for the beauty or history, but specifically to undergo mystical or transformative experiences. These practices, though new in some ways, are rooted in ancient traditions. Many modern-day spiritual seekers are rediscovering and adapting practices that date back thousands of years. The rituals performed by the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Mesopotamians, and other civilizations were often centered around aligning oneself with cosmic energies, harnessing divine power, and seeking spiritual insight. While the specific deities and methods may have changed, the underlying belief in tapping into the power of sacred sites remains consistent. Ancient spiritual practices that once formed the core of temple worship are being revitalized today, often through practices like Fin shamanism, Feng Shui meditation, and Finda and Dingxation, and Findaji healing, with the belief that these ancient energies can still be harnessed for personal and collective transformation. However, it's important to consider, are these modern seekers truly unlocking the mysteries of the past, or are they being guided by something much older? Could the practices they are engaging in simply be a form of modern spiritual expression, inspired by ancient traditions, but ultimately disconnected from the original intent of the temples? Some argue that while the locations themselves may still be powerful, the meaning and the wisdom embedded within these places may have been lost or altered over time. Others believe that the connection is real, and that the ancient temples continue to serve as portals to deeper spiritual truths that humanity is only beginning to rediscover. Now that we've explored how ancient spiritual practices are being revived today, let's look at the ultimate question. Can we ever truly uncover the complete truth about these ancient temples and the knowledge they contained? How much of the spiritual power once housed in these sacred spaces remains accessible today? And can modern spiritual seekers tap into it in the way that their ancient predecessors did? These questions remain at the heart of the ongoing search for the hidden wisdom of the ancient world, and the answers may lie in the intersection of history, mystery, and the deep spiritual connection to the sacred sites that continue to inspire us. Are we on the verge of unlocking the final secrets of the ancient world, or are these mysteries destined to remain hidden forever? Will we ever fully understand the true purpose of these temples and the power they once wielded? The search for truth about ancient temples, what they were used for, what knowledge they held, and what secrets they still guard, remains one of humanity's most captivating pursuits. Despite the technological advancements in archaeology and historical research, much about these sacred sites continues to elude us, remaining shrouded in mystery. For centuries, these temples have sparked curiosity, inspired awe, and prompted countless theories, but the full truth about their purpose and the profound knowledge they may have contained is still just beyond our reach. The last few decades have seen significant progress in the field of archaeological exploration, with the advent of new technologies like fine-ground, penetrating radars, infrared imaging (FE), and digital reconstructions. These tools have allowed scientists to peer beneath the surface of ancient sites, revealing hidden chambers, forgotten passages, and long-lost artifacts that would otherwise remain concealed. For example, in Egypt, the use of ground-penetrating radar has led to the discovery of hidden chambers inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, which could potentially contain undiscovered treasures or even the long-lost knowledge that the ancient Egyptians embedded into their monumental structures. Similarly, infrared imaging has been used to explore the stonework of ancient temples, uncovering details of their construction that were previously unknown, shedding light on the advanced engineering skills of their builders. In Machu Picchu, technology has revealed hidden structures and agricultural terraces that suggest a deeper level of organization and sacred significance than previously understood. FIDAR, light detection and ranging technology, has uncovered entire networks of buildings and pathways that had been buried under centuries of vegetation. This has provided new insight into how the Inca people might have used the site for spiritual, ceremonial, and astronomical purposes. The discovery of these hidden features has helped reshape our understanding of the site's function, but questions remain about how it fits into the larger spiritual practices of the Inca civilization. Was it purely a temple dedicated to the gods? Or was it a place for royal ceremonies? Or perhaps a blend of both? While these technological advancements continue to provide exciting new information, the question remains, will we ever uncover all the secrets these ancient temples hold? The mysteries of these sites are often far deeper than the physical structures themselves. The spiritual significance, the rituals performed within their walls, and the knowledge they were intended to preserve may forever elude us. Ancient cultures were often deeply secretive about their practices, passing down their sacred knowledge only to a select few initiates. Much of what we know about these temples comes from second-hand accounts, fragmented texts, and later interpretations, often from civilizations that sought to suppress or replace the original spiritual practices. For instance, many of the written texts from ancient civilizations, like Phi Mesopotamia, Egypt ID, and Phoi Maya, were either lost in the tumult of invasions or deliberately destroyed as the rise of new religions and powers sought to erase older belief systems. The Library of Alexandria, once home to countless scrolls containing invaluable knowledge of ancient spiritual practices, was burned in a series of devastating fires, and much of that knowledge was forever lost. The deliberate erasure of knowledge by conquerors and religious reformers, while politically motivated, means that the true purpose and power of many ancient temples are forever clouded in uncertainty. As new discoveries are made, the picture of ancient spiritual practices becomes clearer, but the full truth remains elusive. The challenge also lies in the interpretative nature of these discoveries. For every archaeological find, there are countless interpretations, often shaped by the biases of the researchers, the time in which they were made, and the culture through which the findings are viewed. The meanings of symbols, rituals, and architectural designs can be interpreted in many ways, and much of the sacred knowledge that these temples held may have been intentionally esoteric, requiring a depth of understanding that modern minds struggle to grasp. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, were not just building temples for worship. They were creating intricate systems of belief that connected their gods, the stars, and the very forces of nature. Decoding these systems is no simple task, and many aspects may remain beyond our current comprehension. Even as we uncover new details, we must ask ourselves whether we are approaching the truth in the right way. Ancient civilizations didn't just build temples, they built entire ways of life around their spiritual practices, ways of life that are fundamentally different from our modern, materialistic worldview. Perhaps the secrets they guarded were not meant to be uncovered by archaeology alone, but through a deeper, more intuitive connection to the energies and symbolism that these sacred sites hold. Are we looking for answers in the wrong places? Could the key to understanding these temples be less about uncovering physical artifacts and more about rediscovering the spiritual practices they once embodied? As we come to the end of our journey through the temples of the ancient world, one thing remains clear: the pursuit of hidden knowledge is an eternal quest, one that will continue to shape the way we see the past, the present, and the future. While we may never fully uncover the mysteries that these sacred spaces once held, the search itself continues to illuminate the profound connection between humanity and the divine. In our exploration of ancient temples, we are reminded that some mysteries may never be solved and some secrets may remain hidden. But the quest for truth is what drives us forward, shaping our spiritual landscape and enriching our understanding of the ancient world and its enduring legacy. What if the gods of ancient temples weren't just myths, but real beings who once walked among us? Could the ancient stories be telling us a truth we've overlooked for millennia? For centuries, humanity has looked at the gods of ancient cultures as symbolic figures, powerful deities who were worshipped, revered, and invoked in religious rituals, but ultimately distant from human experience. These gods, often understood as forces of nature or embodiments of divine principles, have been seen as purely spiritual beings. But what if they were more than that? What if the gods weren't just ethereal forces, but beings of flesh and blood who once walked the earth, interacting with humans, shaping history, and guiding the course of civilization? The idea that gods were not only divine but also physical entities is not as far-fetched as it might seem. Ancient texts, myths, and even archaeological evidence hint at the possibility that the gods were once living beings who mingled with humanity. Consider the Fudi Anunnaki, the ancient Sumerian gods who were believed to have descended from the heavens to rule over the earth. According to Sumerian texts, these deities were not distant figures, but active participants in the development of civilization. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known pieces of literature, describes gods who walked the earth and interacted with humans, giving them wisdom, knowledge, and even technological advances. The gods were not abstract beings but physical figures who took on human-like forms, and their influence on humanity was direct and undeniable. In ancient Egypt, the gods were also portrayed as beings with both divine and physical aspects. Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Phaethra were not simply spiritual symbols, but powerful beings who were believed to have lived in physical form, interacting with mortals and governing the forces of nature. The pharaohs themselves were considered to be living gods, embodiments of the divine on earth, and often claimed to have descended directly from the gods. The physicality of the gods was not just a belief, it was a fundamental part of Egyptian religion. Temples dedicated to gods like Phaemon and Phaen-Horusi were not only places of worship, but spaces where the divine was thought to manifest in tangible ways. Priests, high priests, and even the pharaohs would perform rituals designed to invoke the presence of the gods, believing that they could interact directly with these physical divine beings. Similarly, in Ancient Greece, gods like Phineus, Apollo, and Phineophene were not viewed solely as abstract ideals, but as beings who physically walked among humans. Greek myths are filled with tales of gods who took human form, interacted with mortals, and even had offspring with them. These stories were not seen as mere allegories, but as accounts of divine beings who mingled with humanity, influencing the lives of kings, heroes, and ordinary people alike. Hercules, the son of Zeus, was one of the most famous of these semi-divine figures, a literal embodiment of the union between god and human. The gods of Greece, like those of Egypt and Sumer, were believed to have lived among humans in a tangible physical form, guiding them, testing them, and sometimes even ruling over them. Archaeological evidence also supports the idea that the gods were believed to have physical manifestations. In the Mesopotamian ziggurats, for example, the towering structures were not only places of worship, but were thought to be the literal homes of the gods. These temples were designed to bring the divine presence into the physical world, with priests acting as intermediaries between the mortal realm and the gods who inhabited the sacred spaces. The belief was that the gods resided in these temples, taking on a form that could be interacted with by the priests and worshippers. Even in the civilization by, monumental pyramids and temples were constructed with the belief that they were gateways between the earthly and divine realms, places where the gods could descend and engage with humanity. If these gods were indeed physical beings who once walked among us, it begs the question, what were their true purpose and nature? Did they come to Earth for benevolent reasons as protectors and guides? Or were their intentions more complex, perhaps even self-serving or manipulative? Many ancient texts speak of gods who imparted great knowledge to humanity, knowledge that allowed civilizations to flourish. From writing and agriculture to astronomy and architecture, the gods were credited with giving humans the tools to build great societies. But at the same time, many of these same gods demanded worship, sacrifices, and tribute. Were they truly divine, or were they advanced beings, perhaps extraterrestrial in nature, whose knowledge and power were so far beyond human understanding that they were seen as gods? While it's difficult to definitively answer these questions, the ancient accounts and archaeological discoveries provide intriguing clues. The physicality of the gods in these ancient stories suggests that they were more than just myths. They were real, tangible beings who interacted with the human world in ways that we may still be struggling to comprehend. While the idea of gods walking among us challenges our traditional understanding of history and spirituality, it also invites us to rethink our assumptions about the past. Could it be that the gods of ancient temples were not merely symbolic figures, but real beings who shaped the course of human history? Could the ancient stories be telling us a truth we've overlooked for millennia? These questions continue to captivate us, urging us to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, while challenging our understanding of the divine and the nature of existence itself. While the idea of gods walking among us is compelling, we must also consider the possibility that these temples held even more enigmatic secrets, ones that have yet to be fully revealed. What else might the ancient world be hiding, and how much of their true knowledge can we still uncover? These questions continue to beckon, leaving us with a sense of wonder and the unrelenting drive to search for answers. What if the ancient temples were never meant to be just buildings? Could they be eternal symbols, reminding us of a greater mystery that transcends time and space? Ancient temples have always held a unique place in human history, not just as physical structures, but as powerful symbols of humanity's eternal quest for higher knowledge, spiritual awakening, and connection to the divine. These sacred spaces were built with the intention of bridging the gap between the mortal world and the divine realm, and their symbolism continues to resonate even today. From the towering pyramids of Egypt to the intricate stone carvings of Angkor Wat, these temples have come to represent much more than just places of worship. They are markers of our collective longing for deeper understanding, for a glimpse beyond the veil of ordinary existence. In their original forms, ancient temples served as the focal points of spiritual and societal life. In civilizations such as Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and the Americas, these sacred spaces were designed to honor the gods, offer sacrifices, and provide a place where humans could seek divine favor. Yet, over time, these temples evolved into much more than just religious centers. They became enduring symbols of the human need to connect with something greater than ourselves. Each temple, whether it was a pyramid, a ziggurat, or a Greek temple, was meticulously crafted to reflect the cosmic order, aligning with celestial events and symbolizing humanity's place within the universe. They were designed to speak to something deep within the human psyche, the desire for transcendence, for meaning, and for a connection to the divine. Even in the modern world, these ancient temples continue to inspire awe and reverence. When people visit sites like Findi Stonehenge, Fimishu Pikshu, or the Singrate Pyramid of Giza, they are not merely observing remnants of ancient history. They are engaging with powerful symbols of the eternal human quest for spiritual truth. These sites draw seekers, not just because of their architectural beauty or historical significance, but because they resonate with a universal longing. People come to these temples not only to learn about the past, but to experience something that feels timeless, as though the mysteries that these temples hold are still alive, waiting to be discovered. Even when we do not fully understand the knowledge that these temples were meant to preserve, their very presence speaks to us on a deeper, almost subconscious level. This symbolic power of the temples extends far beyond their physical structures. The very act of building these monuments reflects humanity's desire to leave a mark on the world, to connect with something eternal. In many ways, temples are the ultimate expressions of human creativity and ambition, serving as both a tribute to the divine and an attempt to capture the essence of the universe in stone. Whether through the alignment of their architecture with celestial bodies, their use of sacred geometry, or their symbolic carvings and inscriptions, temples represent the intersection of the material and spiritual worlds. They embody humanity's search for answers to the greatest existential questions. Where did we come from? What is our purpose? What happens after death? Over time, as the original purposes of many ancient temples faded into history, their symbolism grew even more powerful. Temples became cultural icons, representing the enduring mystery of life itself. In cultures around the world, the images of great temples have been immortalized in art, literature, and myth, often as representations of both the divine and the human spirit. The Pantheon Nu in Rome, the symbol of Karnak in Egypt, and the Sayatu-Undreet Wall of China. Each of these structures has come to symbolize more than just the civilization that built them. They symbolize the aspirations of humanity as a whole, our desire to understand the cosmos and our place within it. As modern religions and philosophies evolved, many of these temples were repurposed, destroyed, or abandoned. Yet, the mystique they carry has never faded. Instead, temples have been repurposed as cultural landmarks, drawing millions of visitors each year who seek to connect with something larger than themselves. People travel to these sites, not just for tourism or historical education, but to experience something spiritual, whether they are standing in awe at the ruins of the Finn Temple of Apollo at Delphi, meditating among the ruins of the Finn Mayan temples in the Yucatan, or attending religious services in modern cathedrals. People continue to seek the same connection to the divine that the ancient temple builders sought centuries ago. These enduring symbols also continue to inspire modern architecture and design. Many modern religious buildings, from churches to mosques, reflect the principles of sacred geometry and celestial alignment that characterized the great temples of the past. The Gothic cathedrals of Europe, with their soaring spires and intricate designs, are modern renditions of the ancient desire to reach toward the heavens, much like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia or the pyramids of Egypt. The Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem and the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona similarly embody the ancient traditions of divine geometry and sacred space, continuing the legacy of the ancient temples that once connected humanity to the divine through the act of creation. While these temples may no longer serve the same religious functions they once did, they remain powerful symbols of our continued pursuit of higher knowledge and spiritual understanding. Whether through their physical grandeur, their celestial alignments, or their deep symbolism, ancient temples remind us of our connection to the divine. They inspire awe, reverence, and wonder, not only because of their age and cultural significance, but because they are symbols of the eternal human quest for meaning. As we explore the legacy of these temples, we are reminded that they were never meant to be mere buildings. They are timeless symbols, standing as testaments to humanity's enduring search for the divine, for wisdom, and for answers to the mysteries of existence. The mystique of these sacred spaces lives on, inviting us to look beyond the material world and seek the deeper truths that lie hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives. While temples remain symbols of the human quest for higher knowledge, let's explore the deeper psychological impact they have on those who encounter them, whether in person or through ancient texts. How do these ancient places continue to shape our consciousness and influence modern spiritual seekers? The answer lies in how deeply the temples are woven into the collective human psyche, representing more than just the past. They embody the eternal human longing for connection to the divine. Why do people still feel awe and reverence when they step into ancient temples, even if they don't share the original beliefs? Could it be that these spaces were designed to reach into the depths of our psyche, altering our consciousness forever? Sacred spaces like ancient temples were not just places of worship. They were meticulously designed to evoke deep emotional and spiritual responses from those who entered. The architecture, the symbolism, the rituals, each aspect of these temples was crafted with the intention of inducing profound psychological effects, creating an environment that connected individuals to something larger than themselves. Whether it was a divine presence, a cosmic order, or the collective unconscious, these temples were spaces that altered the human psyche in ways that continue to resonate even today. At the heart of the psychological power of these ancient sites lies the experience of awe. Awe is a powerful emotion that is often triggered by encounters with something vast, overwhelming, or beyond ordinary understanding. Studies in neuroscience have shown that awe has the ability to transcend individual perception and connect us to something larger, something beyond our own limited experience. This emotional response is often accompanied by a sense of connection to the divine, to the universe, or to a higher order. The grandeur and scale of temples, such as the towering Finn pyramids of Egypt or the vast Fidi Parthenon in Greece, were intentionally designed to evoke awe. The massive columns, the intricate carvings, the alignment with the stars, all of these elements work together to trigger a sense of wonder and reverence in visitors. It wasn't just about the physical beauty of the space, it was about creating a psychological environment where the visitor could experience something transcendent. The architecture of these sacred spaces also played a crucial role in shaping the psychological experience. Many temples were designed to alter the way individuals perceived time and space. The Temple of Karnak in Egypt, for example, was aligned with the stars and the rising sun, and as the light filtered through its corridors, it created a sense of connection to the divine forces that governed the cosmos. This kind of spatial manipulation created a feeling of entering a different realm, one that was not bound by the rules of ordinary life. When visitors stepped into the temple, they were transported into a sacred world where the divine was more tangible, more immediate. The use of light, sound, and proportion in temple design all contributed to the sense that these spaces were not just physical locations, but portals to a higher consciousness. Beyond the physical design of the temples, the rituals conducted within them were another key element in evoking profound psychological responses. From offerings and sacrifices to prayer and meditation, the rituals were crafted to induce specific states of mind. These rituals were often repetitive and immersive, creating a rhythm and flow that could lead participants into a trance-like state. This altered state of consciousness is something that modern neuroscience has shown to be a natural effect of certain spiritual practices. The repetitive chanting of prayers, the ringing of bells, and the movement of the body in ritualistic ways all contributed to inducing a psychological state where individuals could feel deeply connected to the divine or to the universe at large. Research in neuroscience has demonstrated that when individuals are exposed to sacred spaces, especially those that evoke awe or reverence, the brain's pseudo-default mode network DMN is activated. The DMN is associated with a state of mind that allows for a deep sense of connection to oneself, others, and the world around them. It is the part of the brain that is engaged when we contemplate our existence, experience moments of insight, or connect with larger universal ideas. This activation is often linked to feelings of spiritual or mystical experiences, and it suggests that the human brain is naturally attuned to sacred spaces and practices. In ancient temples, the architecture, ritual, and symbolism may have been deliberately designed to activate this part of the brain, facilitating a profound psychological and spiritual connection. One theory that has gained traction in recent years is that sacred spaces like ancient temples were not only designed to connect individuals to the divine, but also to the fine collective unconscious, a term coined by Carl Jung to describe the shared reservoir of human experiences, memories, and archetypes. Jung believed that certain symbols and archetypes, such as those found in temple designs and rituals, resonated with deep, universal patterns of human experience. For example, the presence of the Phi circle in many sacred spaces, seen in the architecture of stone circles like Funny Stonehenge, or the circular design of the Phi Pantheon in Rome, is often interpreted as a symbol of eternity, wholeness, and the infinite. The temple, with its geometric precision and sacred design, may have been intended to bring individuals into direct contact with these deep universal symbols, allowing them to experience a sense of oneness with all of humanity and the universe. Despite the passage of time, the psychological power of these ancient spaces still affects those who encounter them today. Visitors to ancient temples report feelings of awe, reverence, and a deep sense of connection to something beyond themselves. These emotional and spiritual experiences are not just the result of the physical beauty of the temples. They are an integral part of the design and purpose of these sacred spaces. Temples were deliberately crafted to trigger deep, transformative psychological responses, guiding individuals toward a deeper understanding of their place in the universe and their connection to the divine. Now that we've explored the psychological effects of these ancient spaces, let's look at how these structures continue to inspire spiritual practices and beliefs in modern times. How are the ancient principles behind temple design and ritual being adapted and revitalized in contemporary spiritual practices? The answers may reveal that the connection between sacred spaces and the human psyche is timeless, continuing to shape our spiritual journeys and our search for meaning. What if the architects of today are unknowingly channeling the same divine energies the ancient builders tapped into? Could modern temples still be unlocking the same hidden spiritual powers? Despite the passage of millennia, the legacy of ancient temples continues to influence modern spiritual practices in profound ways. These sacred spaces, whether the grand pyramids of Egypt, the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia, or the awe-inspiring Greek and Roman temples, were not just architectural feats. They were designed with purpose to align humanity with the divine, to facilitate profound spiritual experiences, and to harness the cosmic forces of the universe. Today, even as many ancient structures have eroded or been repurposed, their principles, symbolism, and designs continue to resonate in modern religious practices, architecture, and spiritual movements. One of the most enduring elements of ancient temple wisdom is the use of symmetry, sacred geometry. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, understood the importance of geometric proportions in creating spaces that not only reflected the cosmic order, but also amplified spiritual energy. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a perfect example of this. Its proportions are thought to encode mathematical ratios found in nature, such as the Simdi-Findi golden ratio, which is believed to resonate with the natural harmony of the universe. Today, many modern churches and spiritual centers still incorporate elements of sacred geometry in their design. The domes in and fined arches of Gothic cathedrals like Foudy Notre Dame de Paris or Sagrada Familia echo the shapes of ancient temples, channeling light and sound to create a transcendental atmosphere. Even in new, agey spiritual centers, the use of geometric patterns, including spirals and circles, is often employed to create a sense of sacred space that aligns with universal energies, drawing on the principles used by ancient builders. The alignment of sacred sites with celestial bodies is another concept that continues to influence modern spiritual practices. Ancient temples were often constructed to align with astronomical events, such as solstices, equinoxes, and the rising and setting of certain stars. The Temple of Amunet at Karnak, for example, was aligned with the sunrise on the winter solstice, creating a powerful spiritual effect as the first rays of light would illuminate the temple's interior. This celestial alignment was not only a way of marking time, but also a way of ensuring that the temple's energy was in harmony with the cosmos. Today, modern religious and spiritual spaces continue to incorporate celestial alignment into their designs. Stonehenge, though ancient, is still an iconic example of a site that aligns with the solstices. In contemporary spiritual spaces, many architects use solar and lunar alignments to enhance the atmosphere during important religious holidays or spiritual practices. For example, modern-day Hindu temples are often designed to align with the sun's rays during significant festivals, ensuring that the divine presence is welcomed and honored at the most spiritually potent moments. Similarly, many Buddhist stupas are aligned with the cardinal directions and celestial bodies, creating a space that fosters deep meditation and spiritual connection. The rituals and ceremonies conducted in ancient temples also have their echoes in modern spiritual practices. In ancient Egypt, rituals were often conducted at specific times to align with the movement of the stars and the changing seasons. These ceremonies were designed to invoke the presence of the gods, to honor the divine forces of the universe, and to align humanity with cosmic cycles. The high priests and priestesses of these temples were trained not only in religious doctrine, but also in the sacred knowledge of the natural world, understanding the movements of the stars, the cycles of the earth, and how these influenced the spiritual and physical realms. In contemporary spirituality, there is a growing movement to revive these ancient rituals, adapting them to modern contexts. New Age spirituality, for instance, draws heavily on the principles and practices of ancient temple wisdom, including the use of rituals that align with celestial events. Full moon and new moon ceremonies, which mark the cycles of the moon, are common in many spiritual communities today. These rituals often include meditation, prayer, and energy work, designed to harness the powerful energies of the lunar cycles. Similarly, many modern shamanic practices are rooted in ancient rituals that were once conducted in temples, such as vision quests, offerings to the elements, and the use of sacred spaces to connect with the divine. The temple as a symbolic space also continues to resonate in modern spiritual beliefs. While the physical temples of ancient civilizations may no longer stand in their original forms, the concept of the temple as a sacred container for divine energy remains central in many contemporary spiritual practices. For instance, in fine Christianity, the idea of the temple was transferred to the body of the believer, as described in the Bible. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit? This shift reflects the idea that the divine is not confined to a specific building, but is present within each individual. This concept has parallels in 50 New Agey practices, where individuals are encouraged to treat their bodies and minds as temples, creating personal sacred spaces for meditation, healing, and spiritual connection. Modern 50 architecture has also been influenced by the timeless principles of ancient temples. Many modern churches, mosques, and temples incorporate features that were central to ancient temple design: grand arches, domes, and columns that evoke a sense of sacred space, elevate the mind, and foster a connection to something greater than oneself. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, Thawin, Sist, Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, and Seki, the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, all utilize principles of design that are rooted in the same spiritual wisdom that informed the construction of ancient temples. These structures are not merely buildings, they are designed to act as spiritual conduits, spaces where the human spirit can connect with the divine. As we explore the impact of ancient temple practices on modern spirituality, let's reflect on the eternal mystery of these sacred spaces. Are they simply remnants of the past, or do they continue to hold hidden truths that can unlock the future? The ancient wisdom embedded in these temples has not been forgotten. It lives on, influencing our spiritual practices, our architecture, and our understanding of the divine. From the use of sacred geometry to celestial alignments, and from the revival of ancient rituals to the creation of modern spiritual spaces, the legacy of these sacred sites continues to shape the way we seek higher knowledge and connect with the divine. Whether in the quiet solitude of a modern church, the healing rituals of a New Age gathering, or the awe-inspiring presence of an ancient ruin, the energy of the temples endures. What if the greatest mystery of all is that the ancient temples were never meant to be fully understood? Could the search for these lost truths be an eternal quest, one that we are still on today? Throughout our journey, we've explored the awe-inspiring, enigmatic world of ancient temples, spaces that have sparked curiosity and wonder for millennia. From the celestial alignments of Egypt's pyramids to the sacred geometry of Greek temples, each structure was designed to evoke deep psychological, spiritual, and cosmic connections. But, as we peel back the layers of these ancient sites, the full depth of their meaning may always remain just beyond our grasp. Modern archaeology continues to uncover new information about these sacred spaces, revealing hidden chambers, advanced construction techniques, and artifacts that shed light on ancient beliefs and practices. Yet, for all that we have discovered, many questions remain unanswered. What was the true purpose of these temples? Were they merely places of worship, or were they designed to channel cosmic forces and awaken hidden spiritual knowledge? Even with the advancements in technology penetrating radar, infrared imaging, and digital reconstructions, we still find ourselves at the edge of a vast and uncharted mystery, one that may never be fully revealed. This tantalizing uncertainty is part of the allure of these ancient sites. The unanswered questions about the divine beings who may have walked among us, the rituals that took place in sacred spaces, and the knowledge that may have been concealed or lost, continue to inspire wonder. In many ways, these temples are more than just historical relics. They are symbols of our collective search for understanding, for connection to something greater than ourselves. The fact that the full knowledge of these temples may never be unlocked only adds to their mystique, encouraging generations of seekers to continue their quest for the divine truths they hold. But as we reflect on this ongoing search, we also realize that the journey is just as important as the destination. Perhaps the true purpose of these ancient temples was not to be fully understood in our lifetime, but to inspire an unending pursuit of knowledge, a quest that transcends time and space. These sacred sites call us to explore, to question, and to reach beyond the limits of our understanding. As we conclude our journey, we leave you with this thought: perhaps the true purpose of these ancient temples was not to be understood, but to inspire an unending search for the divine truths that lie just beyond our reach. The mysteries of the past continue to guide us forward, inviting us to embark on our own personal explorations and to keep the flame of curiosity alive. The legacy of the ancient temples lives on, waiting for those who dare to seek the hidden knowledge they contain. The ancient temples may have been forgotten by time, but their mysteries live on, beckoning us to uncover their secrets. Will we ever fully understand them, or will they remain a timeless enigma? Throughout this journey, we've explored the fascinating and mysterious world of these sacred spaces, from their awe-inspiring architecture to the complex rituals that took place within their walls. Ancient temples have captivated the human imagination for millennia. Despite the passage of time, these temples continue to hold a deep and magnetic allure, not just as physical structures, but as symbols of humanity's eternal quest for meaning, connection to the divine, and understanding of the cosmos. The secrets of the ancient temples may never be fully revealed. While modern archaeology and technology continue to shed light on these sites, many of their most profound mysteries remain just beyond our reach. Whether it's the true purpose of the pyramids, the celestial alignments of Stonehenge, or the spiritual practices that once thrived in the temple corridors of Egypt, Sumer, or Greece, the full knowledge of these sacred spaces is shrouded in uncertainty, and perhaps that is part of the allure, the realization that the answers we seek may always remain out of reach, forever tantalizing us and urging us to continue the search. But even if the complete truth is never uncovered, the journey of discovery itself is invaluable. The exploration of ancient temples and the wisdom they contain is a reflection of the human spirit's unyielding curiosity. It's about more than just uncovering artifacts or ancient texts. It's about connecting with something timeless, something that transcends the material world. These sacred spaces remind us that our search for meaning, for connection with the divine, and for understanding of the universe is a journey that will continue long after we are gone. As we reflect on the ancient temples, we are reminded that they are not just ruins, they are powerful symbols. They represent humanity's deep yearning for understanding and transcendence, echoing through the ages and continuing to captivate people around the world. Whether visited by modern-day pilgrims, spiritual seekers, or curious tourists, these temples continue to inspire awe, wonder, and reverence. In their quiet majesty, they stand as reminders of our collective past and as beacons guiding us forward on our own spiritual journeys. The allure of these ancient sites will continue to captivate future generations. The mysteries of the temples, both the known and the unknown, will persist, serving as an invitation to those who seek answers. As we move forward in our quest for knowledge, the temples remain open, waiting to share whatever wisdom they still hold. The search for truth is endless, and while we may never fully understand the complexities of these ancient spaces, we will continue to be inspired by the timeless pursuit of the divine. The journey of discovery is far from over, and as long as these temples stand, their mysteries will continue to guide us, offering clues, inspiration, and wonder to those who dare to seek the unknown. Could the ancient temples still be guiding us towards something far greater than we can imagine? The search continues, and the mysteries persist, waiting for those brave enough to seek the truth. As we conclude our exploration of these sacred spaces, we are reminded of the deep, enduring impact these ancient temples have on humanity. These magnificent structures were not merely built to honor the gods, but to act as conduits between the divine and the mortal, offering us a glimpse of something greater than ourselves. Even today, thousands of years later, these temples continue to captivate the imagination, inspire spiritual seekers, and provoke curiosity in all who encounter them. Throughout this journey, we have explored the mysteries, the symbolism, and the profound human experiences embedded within these ancient sites. We've delved into the spiritual and psychological power that these temples hold, the lasting influence they have on modern religious practices, and the ongoing quest for the knowledge they might still contain. Despite the passage of time and the erosion of many physical structures, the significance of these temples remains unwavering. They are not just relics of the past, they are living symbols of humanity's collective desire to understand the cosmos, connect with the divine, and uncover the mysteries of existence. As we look at these ancient ruins today, it's important to recognize that they are not simply historical artifacts. They are a testament to the human spirit's eternal yearning to know more, to reach beyond the limits of what is known and touch the unknown. The fact that these sites still inspire awe and reverence across cultures and generations speaks to the deep, universal truths they hold. Whether through their stunning architecture, their celestial alignments, or the powerful rituals once conducted within their walls, ancient temples continue to serve as a bridge between the material and the spiritual worlds. The search for the ancient truths and mysteries within these temples is a journey that never truly ends. While we may never fully uncover all the knowledge these spaces hold, the pursuit of that knowledge is an adventure in itself. It is a journey that continues to unfold, generation after generation, as we explore these sacred spaces and reflect on the wisdom they contain. Perhaps the greatest revelation is not in finding all the answers, but in the search itself, the quest for understanding that challenges our perceptions and expands our consciousness. In the end, the mysteries of the ancient temples are more than just puzzles to solve. They are invitations inviting us to question, to seek, and to grow. They are reminders that our journey for deeper knowledge and spiritual connection is never truly complete, but always ongoing. As we continue to explore, to learn, and to reflect on these sacred spaces, we are reminded that the quest for truth is one that transcends time, and the answers we seek may lie not only in the ruins of the past, but in the way we approach the mysteries of the present and future. The search for knowledge, the pursuit of the divine, and the exploration of these ancient temples are all part of a greater adventure, one that will continue to inspire, challenge, and guide those brave enough to seek the truth. And in that search, perhaps we will find that the greatest power lies not in the answers we uncover, but in the journey itself.